Welcome everyone to episode, what I believe to be 11. Hopefully it's 11, otherwise I'm very embarrassed right now. Hotline League, we're here, and it's great, and you're here, and that's also great. I'm joined right now.
Start over, I just put my glasses on.
I'm joined right now by my colleague Mark Zimmerman, co-host of the show, and we will be joined in a little bit by Dash of the Analysts Analyst Desk, but we have a little some stuff to talk about first before we can grab him and bring him in. Either way, how's your week been, Mark?
It's been interesting. Had some figure out some stuff for the offline TV house.
Oh yeah, what did you have to figure out?
Just like what we're doing with content and stuff, because they've been doing a lot of IRL streams, which are doing very well, and then people are cutting up highlights and putting them on YouTube, which is also doing well. But it wasn't something that was initially something we would want on our YouTube channel, so we had to figure out exactly what we want to do with the IRL content and reach a resolution and all that jazz.
So, that's exciting.
Not really.
Thrilling content here on Hotline League. This is what, whenever people, I always title the video something like, TSM is the worst team ever, something people click it and they're like, oh, this is engaging, and then they're going to get Mark talking about offline politics, and I now regret asking you that question. Either way, thank you, Mark, for asking me. My week has been great. It's Tuesday. Normally I do this show on a Monday, but the scheduling conflict pushed it to here.
Hey, Travis, how do you feel about Riot Games not publishing or telling us where the finals are yet?
Yes. I'm glad you asked me, Mark.
Yeah, there you go.
Well, we'll dive into that topic in just a second, but for those that have not watched the show before, the way this works is we take live call-ins from the different folks that are watching the show. Then later on, you might watch it on YouTube. You might watch it on podcast. People always ask me when and where. This is my Twitch channel. The SOTL Travis Twitch channel. Might change it to Travis Gafford in the future. We usually do it Mondays at 8. This time it's Tuesdays at 8. If you check out my Twitter on Mondays, I'll usually give you guys updates on when it's scheduling or if we're rescheduling it or who the guest is.
By the way.
Yes, Pacific, because if you guys don't notice this, all League of Legends stuff is Pacific for North America. And Mark, do you want to talk about how the Discord stuff works?
I'll save it until after we talk with James a little bit.
All right.
Because I told James if he wants to think of something to ask the fans, he can kind of prompt us if he wants to.
Okay. Well, either way, we'll get to Discord instructions in a little bit, but if you're really eager, there's a link in the Twitch chat, and people will spam, I'm sure, the instructions there. But before we bring Dash on, who will be on in about 10 minutes or so, maybe 5, wanted to talk a little bit about a couple things. One is a little bit of frustration. Mark, did you have a chance to watch, or maybe you just saw the headline for my video about there's no announcement yet on where Spring Finals is going to be?
Didn't watch it. I saw that there was a date. I saw you tweeting about it a couple times, and I know that you have been talking to me about this since the start of the season.
Where is it? I just wish that Riot would communicate about this stuff, and I don't know. Maybe this is probably not the show to take too many calls on it, since Dash won't be able to speak to it too much. I'd rather have people ask him questions about the analyst desk and how he does stuff and all that. But really would like to see an answer there, and don't know if you have an opinion on it.
Oh yeah, there's this big room full of where it's gonna be at Riot, and they're talking about how great it's all gonna be, and I just walk past it every day with my insider knowledge that I just love so much. So
no,
it doesn't bother me at all.
You can give me an answer. I'm just curious if you have a stance on this.
I mean, I understand where especially media and people who are like third party but still need to know, because teams will mostly be accommodated, but like maybe you're the family of a team and you would like to know and plan a trip, and it's very hard to do that. It's not just media members that this inconveniences. So I do agree largely that this should be sorted out much faster.
Yeah. Other than that, any interesting stuff from this week that
actually, let me ask you this.
Yeah.
They're obviously, it's not like they haven't started planning for this, right? Like they must have narrowed some list down. I would hope so. Let's work with the assumption that they haven't nailed a place down yet, else I'm sure they would have announced it. Would you enjoy or prefer if they were like, hey, we're looking at Texas, Quebec, some other fucking place, and they gave you three places to start planning around?
No, I don't think that. I think my frustration is, like, if they do not have it nailed down yet, then I understand why they can't announce it. I think for me, I would like to see I think the problem then is that why don't they have it nailed down yet? Just because we've been doing LCS for so many years that we should be at a place now where this should already be resolved. So if it's not resolved yet, see, this is why I see no reason why this hasn't been announced yet. Because if they do know where it is and they're just not communicating it, that's really frustrating. If they don't know where it's going to be yet, that is really problematic because I think that it just illustrates that there's not enough planning ahead yet. And while I was willing to excuse that in the beginning of League of Legends competitive history, it's a lot harder to excuse now. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah. It's kind of my take there.
Something
Either
else
way,
you want to talk about?
yeah, I'm just trying to think if there's anything else we should chat about before we get Dash on. Anything that you want to say that you don't want him to hear? Because surely he's not watching this right now.
No, I doubt it.
You want to trash him?
No.
Okay.
I don't like his beard.
Okay. Oh, really?
rough.
Okay, we'll talk about that when he
Yeah,
gets
well,
on.
it irritates when you kiss.
Cool. Well, we're going to talk about that in just a second as we pull Dash into the call. For everyone who is... hang on one second, Mark.
Wait,
for everyone,
do you want me to...
Yeah. I'm just transitioning back to a holding screen. For everyone who we're grabbing him and you'll have to add him to the Skype call.
Yeah, tell me, am I good to do that?
Yeah.
All right, there we go.
So I'm going to type instructions in the... Oh. We're now in a different Skype window. I see.
Ooh, James has the fancy lighting.
He does have the fancy lighting. Did he buy it just for this? That's the question.
I doubt it.
We need to get him in the Discord call. Oh, hi. Hi, Dash. Can you hear us?
Because I muted myself on Skype.
You
Yes,
are so
perfect.
ahead of the game here.
Dude, you guys like my lights too?
Yes.
Yeah.
You did it. So
nailed
did you
the
buy
field.
that for the show?
I made it work.
Okay.
We could talk about it on the show.
Yeah,
but I
okay,
literally heard your
okay.
comment. He's
Yeah.
probably in an office or some shit, or you didn't remember Azale, and I was like, no fucking way.
Yeah, okay.
Let me guess. You put like 2 monitors of different colors on your face.
Yep, I have a laptop on one side and my second monitor on the side. Both have different color. It's a YouTube video that has changing colors, so it'll change.
Nice.
That's good, dude.
And I just turned those on because I was like, you know, there's no fucking way I'm going to show. I also
Twitch chat's going to see this in a second. They're going to be very excited, I'm sure. Oh,
Perfect. I was gonna say you need the shades.
Yeah, I wasn't. Come on, dude. I mean, Mark, I'm the host, right? Like, if there's anything,
He knows
if
how
there's
to
one
enter.
person who's gonna come prepared for something, it's gonna be me.
yeah.
It's gonna be me.
Travis, you want to take the night off? We have a real host here.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm noticing. Holy
All right, I
moly.
gotta pull. Let's see, I gotta pull Twitch chat up, so I have that.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
just-
Don't be careful with those guys. They'll discourage you and they
right.
tear you down. You know, it's not what you
Yeah.
want.
James
This
is
a
very
good look,
delicate.
though. I actually
When we
really
give
like
him
your
fe-
set. I'm impressed you were able to do that without spending all the money on the light bulbs.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's not as elegant a solution as yours, but
I mean,
it
it
definitely
works.
works for
Yeah.
25 seconds of thought
Exactly.
in my bedroom.
Very good. Well, welcome to the show, Dash. Officially, you
Thank
are
you.
our second right personality to be on Hotline League, but definitely the one with the best lighting so far. So I'm excited about that.
That's all I wanted. So.
So let's really quickly. Everybody knows you as the guy at the desk. Who are you outside of the desk? You know, people want to get to know James Patterson, not just Dash.
God, I don't know. I'm not that interesting a person.
All right, well, that's the show,
I mean,
everyone.
there it is. I'm gonna take these glasses off only because it's impossible to see in my
No, I
Yeah,
agree.
I
sunglasses
already got
on.
the screenshot. We can take these off.
Yeah,
All right,
so-
perfect. So who am I outside of the LCS? I mean, my life has really revolved around 3 things, I would say, in terms of like passions since growing up, which would be running, acting, and video games. 2 of those things I still get to do. One of them, unfortunately, as of last year, I can't really do so much. That would be running. But so much of my life and my focus has been around those 3 things: the people I associate with and what I do, even as hobbies, typically revolve around those 3 things. So I don't know if I'm that interested. I'm not a well-versed person, maybe.
Yeah.
But
Well, it's hard. I don't know if anybody in esports is well versed. That's the secret. All of us are so busy with
kinda
this
is,
stuff.
right?
Yeah.
You can't, because especially in the infancy of a sport, those or anything really, not even a sport. Let's not isolate it to a sport. In the infancy of any product or any new field, it's those who've put in the hours who rise to the top. Those are the ones who quickest display an expert level of knowledge or ability in certain areas. And so, yeah, it kind of makes sense that 8 years, 10 years, and however many years into, well, we're 8th season of LCS. That certain people are where they are.
Yeah, it's an interesting situation. I mean, I think for me it's funny because not only do we all spend so much time actually working and building content and doing all this stuff for this, but outside of it, most of us are just hanging out with each other. It's like I have a Monday off and I'll go get food with Mark, instead of doing something outside of esports. It's like I continue to hang out with everybody in the scene. So it's an interesting situation.
Very much so.
I wanted to get your take before we open it up to callers on, because I like to have discussions a little bit with the guests so that it gets the callers to start coming up with ideas on stuff they want to talk about. But we've talked a little bit in the past 2 weeks with Mark about changes to the analyst desk, and I think the desk is probably changing the most since you first arrived on it this year. I just wanted to get your take on what you thought of the changes so far and how it's coming along, and sort of your take on all that stuff.
Okay. I mean, obviously, we could make this as in depth as we want, and I hope we do. That's what I would actually want to encourage viewers is let's talk about the analyst desk. Let's talk about what you guys want from it, your expectations, feedback. As we've initially made some changes, but I guess what I'll start with is like broad strokes. I'm crazy excited for what we intend to do. What we want to do for the year. Of course, execution to be determined. But yeah, as you mentioned, Travis, like this is legitimately within even the first 2 weeks of the NALCS, the greatest transition that the analyst desk has ever undertaken since I've come to Riot, and that's largely due to prioritization of other things, which is entirely fair. You have to have a working league, and I'd rather the games be, good and 100% watchable and enjoyable before the post game or the pre-game for the game is 100% watchable and enjoyable. And so I think that the prioritization in terms of leveling up to some degree when it comes to the broadcast has been correct over the years. And hey, now it's the analyst desk's turn. We finally have the State Farm analyst desk's turn. We finally have the resources and the time and some stability in the league that we can say, hey, let's focus on now the presentation of the narrative. Let's focus on the content, outside of the game, the LCS game itself.
Yeah, and obviously you guys were looking at a lot of different ideas and sort of experimenting during the break to sort of figure out how you wanted to change all this stuff.
Right, and when none of those ideas came to fruition, we settled on fine, Mark can come back.
Yes, Mark can come back. But the big question I want to ask you, and maybe the biggest change that I've noticed in the tone of the desk, is that you have facial hair now. And so I'm just kind of curious about how that came about.
That way, I mean, look, I campaigned for it for months. Yeah.
It was a big concern about child labor laws. It was like everyone thinks we're hiring like a 16-year-old, and we have to.
Like, yeah, whatever. No, I'm one of those people that I don't. I mean, now that I have a beard, it'd be weird to say I've been one of those people that could never grow a beard. No matter how hard I tried or how many weeks I put into it, it just never came in fully. And so I've always been more comfortable clean shaven. This year, it just kind of worked out that with the, following All-Stars until the start of the season, I was like, all right, I've got like 6 or 7 solid weeks here where if I'm okay with looking terrible for those 7 weeks, like I might look decent at the end of those 7 weeks. So I went for it. It was dude, it took the most willpower of almost anything I've ever done in my life to not shave it off my face after like week 3 when I was disgusted at myself.
No, I had the same problem when mine first came in. I just thought I couldn't grow without it looking super white trash. It comes in as the patches and it's not full. And Peter was actually encouraging me to shave it dramatically, saying things that I probably won't repeat on the show, but they were not flattering. And now finally it's there. So
But I will say I went to a barber, like I went to an actual barber and had him teach me, where the lines of my beard should be.
Yes.
So like again, up to like a couple weeks ago, I was a total beard noob. I had no idea what I was doing. So I walked in, I was like, just school me on it, dude. Like cut it for me so I can see it on my face, teach me how to groom it, all that kind of stuff. How often should I be, doing certain things and how should I style it? I would suggest that to anyone who wants to grow a beard.
Yeah. Do they do straight razor for you or anything?
Yeah. It's the second.
Are you learning how to do that too?
No. I'm terrified I'd kill myself if I did a straight razor. But it's the only second time I've ever gotten a straight razor shave, and it's insane how much closer they get, but also like kind of how much of a rush you feel when somebody's that close to ending your life.
So at Worlds in 2015, I went to a barbershop in London and had them trim this up and give me a haircut. And one of the interesting things, I don't know if very many people have ever had this, they burned off my ear hair. They lit a little piece of paper on fire and then would like push the fire in the direction of the ear so that just the little hairs that are on your ear are burned off. It's very interesting. I'm sure the majority of the viewers will not have ever heard of that, but it was interesting for sure.
Yeah, no, I don't think I'd ever let any flame anywhere near my face ever.
Yeah. What about flame from the NALCS?
Different story, maybe.
Okay.
We can talk about that later.
He's a handsome dude. All right. Well, I'm trying to think if there's anything else before we open it up to callers. I mean, I guess the last thing is, how do you feel about we're 2 weeks into the LCS. What has been surprising you in the league, and how do you feel about all the new teams and brands, and what's got you excited?
I mean, what's got me the most excited is that no one knows what the hell is happening, right? In a sense, where, again, all preseason power rankings have been entirely flipped on their head, and that really excites me. But I'd say, like, Echo Fox obviously is, I think, again, I contest you're crazy if you thought they'd be first place at the end of, 4-0 end of week 2. It's okay if you're a fan. It's okay if you thought they would be decent by the end of the split, but no way in hell you were legitimately arguing that they'd be first place only undefeated team in the NLCS. But they've been crazy fun to watch. And I said it on the broadcast, like right at the end of the day on Sunday, but one of the things I love about that squad is that they're using this whole negative stigma that's been built up around them as this unifying element. And I think, like, it's as simple an idea as it is, it's incredibly intelligent, and it's something that teams should look to do more often is like understand their brand, play to it. If you're the toxic team that keeps crushing people, if you're the toxic team that's, like waiting for the blow up, it's like play into that brand a little bit, but also let it unify you and push forward. And I think Echo Fox is doing that brilliantly right now. The question is, again, is it sustainable?
Yeah.
But I'm very excited for that squad. I think I'm surprised, like everyone else, about TSM in terms of the 1-3 scoreline. Not that I expected them to be hot right out the gates. And I actually am on the side of, like, I encourage people to give them time. I think it's okay to criticize them in the context of the NALCS because the strength of those players individually should be able to win NALCS games, hands down. But I think people are extrapolating certain arguments from 2 weeks of the LCS to Worlds and MSI and international implications right now, which is it's a little too far.
I mean, how much shit
60% of your roster?
How much shit are you and Mark giving Jet behind the scenes? Because he came out so strong about CLG, who are in a pretty tough situation too.
Mark, get in on this.
I mean, like, I wouldn't say we're giving him too much shit because no one had them. I'm pretty sure I didn't see anyone who had them in the lower half of the league amongst, like, the professional analysts. So I don't think any of us can be like, haha, Jet, you're so stupid. How'd you get this so wrong when it's like I had them third? It's
right.
Like, it's a little hard to go in on him, but we do mess around him because he's not willing to, like, bet against them yet. Whereas, like, I'm off that train. Like,
I mean, even the broadcast, to be fair, is ragging on him. I don't know if you guys, again, if you stick around to the very end, I would encourage everyone, even if you don't watch the analyst desk,
rollouts.
Watch the rollouts at the end of the day, man. Sometimes our editors put in the funniest shit you will ever see in your lives. And like, so this week, Jad said something like, I will pick CLG, I think, like, regardless, every day until week 4. And so they took that clip and they started the rollout with that, and then immediately hard cut to CLG getting aced. And it was just like, I'm just like, this is so goddamn funny. But like, yeah, like everyone kind of gives them a hard time. But to Mark's point, I thought they'd be at least a top 4 team, you know, right off the top. So it's hard to like go totally in on him when I can't even really defend where they are right now, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's just like, how long is he going to stay on that ship? Because after week 1, I was like, all right, fuck CLG, Echo Fox are my new dudes. As soon as I saw that. And like, week 2 worked out pretty well with that mentality. We'll see how long it takes Jat to
Foxcoin, man. Foxcoin is mooning right now.
Find the Foxcoin.
Yeah. All right, so Mark, do you want to give just a quick breakdown of if people want to call in, how they go about doing that?
Yeah, so if it is your dream to talk to Dash, here is your chance to. In the Twitch chat right now, I'm spamming the Discord link. What you're going to want to do is join in there. When you get it up, you will need to join one of the voice channels, General or General 2, so that I can pull you into the waiting room. And the way that I decide to pull you into the waiting room is there are text channels. So in the General channel for text, you're going to want to type out your question. If I see it, I like it, I will drag you into the waiting room from the voice channel, and then you just gotta wait your turn to show up on air.
Yep.
So pretty simple process. We already have a lot of people in the waiting room. There are a lot of analyst desk questions.
If you are a subscriber, there's a special subscriber channel that Mark and I check as well. So it's not a guaranteed situation at all, but you do have a bit of a better chance of getting your topic picked, assuming that you're putting something in there that's interesting. And also just know that it takes a little bit for the subscriber thing to sync with Discord. So, you know, you can talk to any of the Discord mods on it if they're around to try to see if they can help you out with that. But with that being said, Mark, you want to go grab somebody while I...
yeah, absolutely.
I go ahead and read out some subs. So thank you to Krill, the King Lawler, Scorpades, who says 2 months of spamming SOTL Mark Z in Twitch chat, Matt, Jew Moore, Catfish Burglar, Posnot, Fenron Jenkins, my boy Fenron Jenkins, who streams Total War on Twitch, It's So J, and looks like we are on air right now with the King Lawler, who I just said his name out on the subscriber. Thank you so much, King Lawler, for subbing. Where are you calling from?
I am calling from Athens, Ohio.
Athens, Ohio. We're experiencing a heat wave here in California. How's Ohio?
It's very cold. My room specifically is super cold.
Okay.
Just
your room, not even Ohio.
Yeah.
Everybody else. It was like 85 degrees today.
Yeah.
I had AC on. I needed to. I was sweating.
It was ridiculous. Yeah.
Yes.
Anyway, sorry.
So King Lawler, what did you want to talk about?
Well, I had like 4 topics, but I just wanted to focus on the analyst test for now since Dash is on.
Yeah, that's fine. We have more shows in the future for your other topics.
Yeah, sure. So the analyst desk for me is still a skip. I watch everything on VOD, and I watch the interviews sometimes. I'll watch a tiny bit of the analyst desk, but usually not very much. And I think there's some problems for me. I don't like the new predicting the win conditions before the champ select starts.
Okay.
I don't think it makes any sense to try to predict how a team's going to win without knowing what champions they have. It seems, I don't know. I just don't think it gives me much analytical value, really. Usually it's just this team needs to stoneball really hard or something. I don't know. I never think it's that great. And then after the game, I agree that you guys have moved away from just recapping team fights. I never liked that at all. But I still think it's very surfacey. Everything's really on the surface. What I would like to see more of is decisions that were made in the game macro-wise, such as a player could have pushed out a lane when they didn't push out a lane, and that led to such and such happening and X, Y, Z. Because in my opinion, the game of League of Legends is a lot about losing small tempos everywhere. And I think the best way to analyze it is by looking at small tempos that are lost. And I'm sure that the analysts see them. and could share more information with us.
I love that you asked this question. Dash immediately put on his glasses and is obviously taking notes. He's like, okay.
Oh, God.
Right, good.
James is going to
this.
take this so serious. Get ready. Before James goes...
Sorry, guys. I'm going to try hard and, like, everything.
Yeah, you can't... it's tough. But before James goes try hard, I will say the macro point is one I absolutely agree with, and I've been pushing to try and get, like a mini map that we can use more stuff with. It's just actually hard to get one that is what we want it to be. So like I think with that point, we're working on that.
Yeah. Okay.
I remember Mark's always wanted to do macro stuff. Even from Yahoo, he wanted to do kind of like let's look at how like the domino effect of one moment in the game like sort of changed everything. So
yeah. Okay. So I'm gonna echo what Mark just said. And I'll also just kind of make this also another blanket statement for this episode is that, again, this year we have a ton of plans and a ton of ideas for the analyst desk. Those ideas take time to integrate. So what you're seeing here in week 2 is just one little bit, one few, small sampling of things that we're going to attempt to do throughout the year and for future years. And so that doesn't mean that don't give us feedback or criticism on the segments that exist or give us a segment ideas. Please do those things. But do know that like more is to come. And a lot of it we can get into like why there are blockers for things. But in a lot of cases, we are at the mercy of what is technically like available to us. In other words, what graphics do we have? Do we have someone who can physically pull that replay right now? No, they're busy. Okay, we can't do that then, or whatever. And so sometimes things just happen to fall through the cracks, and that's the case. But to your few points, don't like predicting win conditions. Why? I want to ask why first. I want to understand a little bit more about why. Other than the fact that you said it seems like the answer is typically snowball.
I just think that, that's not, but I just think that the analysts don't really have enough information without seeing the draft. And in fact, I think maybe a possible solution is, I don't know why you guys organized the broadcast this way, but maybe the analyst deck should be through the draft so that the story that you're hearing before the game is consistent through the draft phase, because I think that's where really the analyst desk would shine.
Yep, which I'll be honest, in some cases we have considered doing, and I can tell you the EU broadcast has done that.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I know they've done the champ select from analyst desk in the past. I can't think of example games off the top of my head, but I would be curious if you would go back and look at some and then tell me if you like how they do it, because you might end up seeing it and saying, never mind, I take it back. That's not my own comment on the EULCS doing that. But when it comes to predictions, I want to draw an analogy or a comparison to traditional sports, which is if I'm on an NFL desk and Mark is my analyst, I say, Mark, give me the win conditions for the Patriots. And Mark says, okay, I think that they need to play a pass-heavy game, right? But with short increments. So you're looking for your tight ends, most likely running short, 5 to 15 yard routes because X defense is weak in that area, blah, blah, blah. That's an overall strategical point, and that's fair. But what I wouldn't expect Mark to do, right, is I wouldn't expect him to come in and say what they should do is on play 1, they should pass. On play 2, they should run. On play 3, they should pass again. And on play 4, they should throw, run a slant route, this thing. Because as you mentioned, he doesn't have all of the data or information to make an informed prediction for a game when it comes to circumstances like that. Same thing with League. When we're asking for predictions, we're asking for strategical information. We're asking for macro level, larger picture stuff, which is how should they focus the draft? Who should they put resources into? Who is their main carry, or what is the weakness or strength of this team when it comes to the way they play the game? Are they a team fighting team? Are they a 1-3-1 team? Do they excel by controlling vision and invading the jungle and starving people in CS? In a similar way that I would approach that NFL game saying that, okay, they have a really good running defense. Maybe I would focus on passing here, but their secondary is great. So let's go for that tight end 5 to 15 range. He's not calling individual plays. He's not saying, oh, now that I see the way the defense is formationed, I'm going to predict differently. I agree with you.
Yeah.
That you can't do that. But understand the predictions are predictions for the best way the analyst thinks this team can win this particular game and the strategy they should be taking into it. The post game, that's where we could discuss, did they even try the same win conditions, and if they didn't, what did they try? Did it work? And let's talk about that.
I see what you're saying, and that totally makes sense. But I think the difference is, in a traditional sport, I know exactly what weapons each team has, offensively and defensively, so I can predict things. I can predict all the matchups. I almost can play out the game in my head in some respect. But if you say, I think this team really needs to 1-3-1 against whatever TSM, and then they pick a comp that's purely team fighting, it's like all of the analysis for that is totally useless in this game because they didn't pick.
Okay, but I'll contest that. Is it useless? Because if they go a different direction, then we should discuss why. Why did they go a different direction than what we should have expected, right? That should inform how we look at this team from now on. If we think that CLG should be top lane focused, put all of their resources into Darshan because, let's be honest, he's the only performing member right now next to like maybe Huhi. But instead they come into the game and they put Darshan on Maokai and they put Stixxay on Kalista every game. Well, the team is telling us something different. They're telling us they think the best way to win is to play through the bot lane. If that's the case, then now let's reframe the discussion. But these are inputs. They're data points. And I still don't think it's wrong to assess something in one instance in the pregame and then say, hey, we have new data, which is the game in which they played, which is the draft in which they drafted. Why did they disagree with you, Mark? Can you justify why they went against your win conditions? And maybe he goes, well, now that I've seen the game here, I'll tell you why it worked. And hey, they came up with something really smart here. I got to credit Zix for this draft and knowing that they would focus here if you pinch this champion pool, blah, 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 blah. But as a viewer, I would contest, don't you think that that's more interesting than you being able to play out all the scenarios in your own head and then make the analyst test moot?
The other thing I throw in is if you look empirically at like what we've said and what has happened in the games, I feel like generally speaking, Jat and I are pretty on point with what does happen in the games. So to take like off the top of my head, the TSM Echo Fox game, Jat was like snowball topside, get a strong matchup, and they get Vladimir into GP and things are going great. And then my win condition was Dardoch needs to play really well and shit on Mike Young, and it took a little bit of time to come online, but then the whole second half of the game was about Dardoch's engages. So I would say maybe the exact methodology of the win condition is very hard to predict, but the general plot points are there.
And to your point, I agree that I don't think, again, the desk should ever fall into a pattern. That is one of the things we're trying to break this year, is the idea of a pattern. So if you don't like the win condition segment, fine. Hopefully you're not going to have to watch it that often, right? Ideally, I think we've done it either once or twice a day, twice max. I think in a couple of days we've done it once. All right, our hope is that we can start attacking games and analysis from enough angles that we can satisfy all viewers. The reality of it is we won't. We never will. That's always the case. But in your mind, okay, let's say win conditions remains and we do it before champion select. Is there any way that segment could evolve that you would enjoy watching it?
I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I guess it would be okay later in the season. I think it'll definitely improve. Like early in the season, you guys don't really know what the teams are about yet, so it's kind of difficult to make any predictions. So I think it'll get better.
Yeah,
but yeah.
Okay, I want to jump
exactly
to
what you could do.
Well, Dash, I will say, you have to wrap it quickly because we'll have given 10 minutes.
Oh,
to
see, I'm the wrong person
people
for this show.
Yeah,
then.
yeah, I know. I'll just be cutting you off throughout the thing. But
Good.
if you really want to quickly
every now and then,
address something else,
Travis just drag him and throw him in the waiting room for a minute if you need
Oh,
to time
we
him out.
can't- Dash is muted on Discord. I don't know what's going on there. We'll have to move on to the next call.
Yeah, this is my life, guys.
Yeah, but if you want to give a final
long-winded
point,
individual. Well, I was just say the second point is on the post games because I just wanted to address that. that when it comes to surfacey feel stuff, again, that's exactly what we're trying to combat. And I recognize that we're not 100% of the way there, right? We're 5%. We took a solid 5% chunk out of it here in 2 weeks, and we got 95% of the way to go. But to Mark's point, a lot of that stuff, in order to do it cleanly and coherently, requires elements to come along with it. And so it doesn't help us to sit here as three talking heads and say they should remember at 1730 when they had three people bottom and there was a jungler who took the blast cone and that pink ward caught him, and so they knew the thing and they counter ganked. And if you remember that, what they should have done instead was this, right? And so I 100% agree on the main goal, or one of the main goals for the Dust this year, is combating that surfacey feel, but a lot of that it'll come in incrementally as we get elements. If we get this giant blow up mini map where we can put icons on them and move them around and say, hey, this macro move, they should have moved from this part of the map to this part of the map, and it can change really eloquently and cleanly so that you understand it. 100% we're going to do those segments, man. I'm right there with you.
Cool. Well, thank you so much, the King Lawler, for the call-in. And hopefully, and you've definitely gotten Dash revved up. Yeah. Thanks again for the sub. Have a good one.
You too.
All right. So as we are... Okay, It's So J sub. Thank you to them. Yinda Cat, Ice Orbs, who says 2 months, let's go. Dash is trimmed up. So good. Congrats. My PS resubbed for 3 months, says hi, Dash. Sir Cattle subbed. Hook subbed. Mark is still up there. There we go. And
Sorry, it was a confusion. Someone disappeared in the middle of it.
No, it's fine. And right now we're joined by Matt Jew Moore. Where are you calling from, Matt?
Hey guys, I'm calling from College Park, Maryland.
College Park. Where? Sorry, you cut out there at the end.
Yeah.
College Park, Maryland.
Okay,
Maryland.
Cool.
Nice.
Thank you. I called out your name earlier as well, so thank you for the sub. What did you want to talk about on Hotline Dash?
I want to talk about the analyst desk again. I'm actually a big stat guy, so I enjoy the analyst desk. But I think sometimes when you guys do your analysis, kind of like the very narrow scope, you kind of sometimes categorize people using some cliches, and it's a lot of inconsistencies. Like, I guess a good example was when you guys talk about Optic Gaming preseason, the phrase I would hear a lot was like, it's a team with some good players, but it doesn't quite make sense. But then when you're talking about Echo Flock, you're saying, oh, they're a very volatile team. But you don't talk about the fact that, when you look at them, they do make a lot of sense, right? Where you have Huni, who is this great top laner, and then you have Dardoch, who is known for aiding his top laner a lot, and Adrian Altek, who is a very safe bot lane. I just feel there's a lot of inconsistencies in those respects. If that makes sense.
I would say I think those were talking points that we hit. Maybe not specifically on the analyst desk, and I don't know how Jack feels, but personally for me, sometimes it becomes a bit of a blur of where I've said what. Like between, was it a YouTube video? Was it on this show? Did I say it on the analyst desk? And I think I at some point mentioned how like the team of Echo Fox makes sense. It was just that the whole supposedly 100% of these players have basically had complaints about their attitude at some point, other than maybe Alltech. So I think that's where the complaints come from. But I think the idea of kind of stereotyping teams isn't necessarily a bad idea if it's done carefully, where it's like, this team is the like teamwork and friendship team of CLG, that was a narrative that got pushed for a large portion. Like, I think the idea of archetypes make it easily digestible, and as long as you're not like disingenuous, yes, it will lose some of the like accuracy, because you are kind of trying to fit them into a mold so people can understand what that team's about if they don't watch all the time.
Matt, I want to make sure that you had a chance to finish your thought. I don't know if you were completely done. So you were saying that on the analyst desk you feel sometimes like there's a little bit of stereotyping the teams. Did you have anything else you wanted to add to that, or was that sort of your main point?
I mean, that's basically it. And I think sometimes that gets in the way of analysis, and I see what you're saying, Mark, in that, yes, like when you're trying to sell a narrative to, the however many people are in Twitch chat, it's a lot easier if you can say this team is, the fiery but volatile team, and this team is, the teamwork team with CLG's case. But I think a lot of times it does come at the sacrifice of, legitimate analysis. And I think it is an interesting balance. And I guess that's, if I wanted to ask a question, the question is, where do you think you guys draw the line between actual analysis and selling a narrative?
Dash, this guy's a sub, so if you can just keep it a slow simmer instead of a roast, that would be that would be good.
I don't know why everyone thinks I'm roasting everyone.
Yeah. I'm just kidding. But yeah,
well thought out, articulate points are synonymous with flame.
Roast,
Yeah.
Flame, yeah. So I guess let me first acknowledge that, hey, if there are inconsistencies on the desk, that's a bad thing, right? We don't want inconsistency when it comes to terminology or colloquialisms or cliches or archetypes and things like that. And so, hey, if we are being inconsistent, call us out, and we're going to make every effort to change that, because I'm going to contest your second point, which is that archetypes and stereotypes are bad. I fervently disagree with that, especially when it comes to sports and analysis, because you have to understand a few things here, which is one, our audience's understanding of the game, the teams, and the sport varies, and it varies on a scale that you cannot even imagine, right? We've got everyone from the grandpa who's like, 12-year-old grandchild is dragging him in front of the computer saying, watch this thing, it's so cool, who doesn't understand, doesn't even know what he's looking at, to the literal ex-pro who's now watching NALCS on his spare time and understands the game at a far greater degree than I do. But how can we make this watchable for everybody within that spectrum? The only way we can do that is by making those generalizations, I'll put it in air quotes, those stereotypes and those archetypes that we can refer to, that we can bucket and we can reference. And I think that beyond that, archetypes, hey, the word comes from narrative and storytelling. It plays exactly the role it needs to when it comes to building up the story of a league and a season, which is that, hey, if you've got the guys who are crushing, the perennial powerhouses in TSM, that's what they're known as. They're the biggest brand in North American League of Legends. They're the team that owns NA. That's an archetype. That's a generalization. But the fact that we call them that makes it that much more egregious that they're 1-3 right now. People wouldn't be in flames. People wouldn't be, up in arms, pitchforks ready if TSM wasn't called that. If we didn't have the expectations set because of this colloquialism, this generalization, then no one would give a shit that they're not playing well. And so when we look at Echo Fox and we say this is the team that's waiting to implode, guess what? Everyone's watching, waiting for them to implode. But if they don't, it's a good story because they're destroying everyone's or defying everyone's expectations. And if they do, it's a good story because, hey, it aligns with what we've said. And that's the thing that we need to find for all the teams. So back to your original point, if we haven't found that thing for each of the 10 teams, or if we're being inconsistent in the way that we're telling the stories or referring to each of these 10 teams, that's something that we need to approach and adjust so that the trickle down, the following storylines of the remaining 9 weeks fall into place and make sense.
Dash, do you and I can throw this over to Mark as well. Sorry, man, I'll turn to you in just a second. But just off the heels of what Dash was just saying, do you guys worry that ever you paint teams into a corner, right? Like, what if Echo Fox is not going to explode, but you guys keep pushing the narrative like these guys are going to explode, these guys are going to explode, and at a certain point in time it's like, well, the narrative there needs to evolve or whatever. How do you determine how long to stay on sort of a certain quantification of a team or how you decide that this team, what their team story is, before you try to find like what is the next part of this? Or maybe we were wrong all along with the way that we looked at this team.
I mean, I wish there was a hard and fast answer, but I'll let Mark attest to it. We talk constantly about what we've done. We do it in the immediacy of the segment. Like, we'll come off the air and say, how was that? Did we hit our goals? Do we accurately represent the teams? We do it in post-show meetings, and then we do it following our Monday, Tuesday off. Tomorrow we're going to be back in the office. Thursday we're going to have a meeting. We're checking each other. I wish there was a hard and fast rule where we could say every 4 weeks we make sure that the storylines still align and we throw everything back into a blender. That's not the case, but we have to be our best police, and that definitely is a concern.
I would say, yeah, my concern would be like if we've ever painted a narrative that we couldn't as reality shift with it, then we've probably fucked up at some point. Like,
and we undoubtedly have in the past.
Yeah.
Again, we're not without mistake. But I think for as many that we've fucked up, we've probably had as many where we've pivoted correctly. We've said we've been pushing this storyline for like an entire split now. Are we sure this is really still the identity of that team? No? Okay, let's change it. What's the identity now?
Right, so in the Echo Fox example, like, everyone keeps saying, wait for the other foot to drop, wait for the other foot to drop. If they go 18-0, the story is like, the foot never dropped. And if they lose and they keep doing fine, it's like, yeah, the foot dropped and they had a 2-0 week, but they bounced back and like they're fine. And I think hopefully, you know, we can accurately follow each team's narratives, though like it is very hard to track 10 teams with 5 players and interviews and coaching staffs, and sometimes you do lose some important details.
Matt, any final thoughts? I don't want to have you spin Dash on another tangent, but if you have any follow-ups.
I don't think that you have to risk, you know, I don't think you have to give up the narrative. I just think you need to make sure that you're also some additional fact with the narrative. You know, I think you need to be creating an accurate portrait. And for instance, with CLG just now, I think Dash said a little bit ago that, you know, Darshan's the only good player, right? Which, I mean, yes, he's the only one who's playing good in laning phase right now. I think you actually, sorry, to correct myself, you said that Darshan was the only one who's playing good right now. And yes, he's the only one who's playing good in laning phase right now, but then there's a couple games where he got these big leads and didn't do anything with them, right? I think that's equally bad. So when you kind of steer into, you know, the...
Right. Well, we can debate the point about getting leads and not doing anything with them. I know Mark will point to one of those games as we got Darshan a huge lead, and then the team threw his lead for him. Like they needed to support his lead in the top lane, and they just decided to start running it bot and like handing kills back over. So we could debate the micro points, but I think to that final point, the point of the analyst desk and narrative storytelling is to generate discussion. And a lot of times the only way you do that is by indexing slightly over the line in terms of like representing opinions and ideas in a lot of cases. Would you want Mark or Jat to not take hardline stances on teams and do a very vanilla, right, take on a segment and be very accurate to, well, let's not put this adjective to that player because we've got to be careful that they don't become, you know, pigeonholed into that adjective of a player? No, hell no. Half of what's fun about sports is when people make, that's why we have the overreaction segment, when you make wild conclusions based on a performance of a guy. This dude's now a top 3, you know, top laner in the North American LCS, and then you follow up on it. I think what's wrong is if you don't follow up on it and find out like, oh, we were totally wrong in deeming him that, our bad, like we'll eat that. And I think you're gonna find that over the course of the year is that like when we're wrong, we're going to admit that we're wrong, or we're going to make fun of each other. The coin being 0-5, I know it's an inanimate object, but like I'll do that to Jat. If Jat's 0-5, I swear to God, I'll go in on it.
Yeah. Like we're constantly trying to rib each other about like our mess ups and stuff. Like me thinking Echo Fox was going to be bad is something that definitely should be held over my head.
Yeah, dude, Fox coin. I mean, we were like, oh, you're jumping Fox coin already, and now, you know, we're giving shit to Jat for the CLG, you know, first place prediction, and we'll keep going on those things. Definitely hold us accountable, though.
Yeah, and I really do like the analyst desk. I think that is the advantage of having, you know, 3 people on it, right? Is that one of you guys can be giving the hot take, and the other 2 can be, you know, well, actually, blah blah blah.
Yeah, and the thing is, the hot take might not really be a hot take. It might just be what I think, which is not common sentiment. You know,
it doesn't mean that that's fact, right?
Yeah.
None of what these guys say is necessarily fact. And that's one important thing to remember. And they don't even necessarily present it like it's fact all the time. They might present it very fervently and, you know, stoically and like confidently, but that's because it's their opinion. And then we can make fun of them and debate them till the cows come home.
Hey, thank you so much for calling in, Matt. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. Thanks, Travis.
Thank you.
All right. We are going to grab another caller in just a second. But I'm trying to remember where I was before on this list of subs, because we've got quite a few. iFlow has subbed, Fern778, Baby Kangaroos, what a great name. Regvlas Rex, Volks LOL, resubbed for 5 months with the description, yeah, which is it's a great one. and Spuns has resubscribed, and the Naked Homeless Man has gifted a sub to Riot Dash. Congratulations, Dash. A naked and homeless person.
Oh god, it's
gifted
so
you a sub.
useless.
Yeah.
Don't get your hopes up.
You get a Mark Z emote. You can open up the chat on the broadcast, LCS broadcast, and spam Mark Z's face. Yeah.
Oh, great.
We have our next caller here, and in just a second, I'm going to ask him what he wants to talk about. But really quickly, Twitch chat. We want to have a positive environment here. I don't mind if you guys want to give the callers a bit of ribbing, but it's not like a all-out brawl between us versus the caller where you expect, you're not here for blood, all right? Just
they might be
simmer down,
but it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
Other thing, real quick, guys, don't post multiple topics in the thing. You post your topic. If you want to spam it a little bit, I understand you need to like kind of keep it refreshed so I can see it, but don't post like 4 different topics because I'm trying, though it's hard, to like put in things and have some pacing so it's not 10 analyst desk callers in a row. But if you guys keep changing what you're talking about, I have no idea what the hell I pulled you for anymore. And you don't know either.
I know you.
One topic.
I know you. I'm sure you had one topic, and that Mark is not calling you out right now. What do you want to talk about? Where are you from?
I'm from Providence, Rhode Island.
Providence, Rhode Island. That was actually my first League of Legends event that I ever worked at. Was in Providence, Rhode Island. MLG Providence. Really? Yeah. What did you want to chat about?
I was here to talk about Dardoch and the Dardoch narrative.
The Dardoch narrative. Okay, what about it? I'm excited.
I just feel like Dardoch has gotten done like in sort of like the public perception.
Sorry.
It's like, yeah. Sorry, was I too quiet?
Yeah,
no,
we lost. Fine. Yeah, we lost you for a moment.
Yeah,
there.
you said Dardoch's done the public perception, then we didn't hear anything.
I said I felt like Dardoch got done kind of dirty in the public perception.
How so?
And I feel that sort of relative to, especially in like more conventional sports, guy go in and he like has some like attitude problems, especially someone is like, I think Dardoch's like just the craziest player ever. Like I think he's such an insane talent, especially for North America. I just feel like, I don't know. I just feel like people were really quick to come to like really harsh judgments on him, even beginning with just like his Liquid days.
When did Dardoch join the league, Mark?
Spring 2016. Dom played the first game, didn't like it. Dardoch subbed in second game week 1.
Okay,
and
so
was the starter after that.
Spring 2016. So spring, summer, spring 2017. Spring or summer 2017.
Dash wants to know what teams he's been on during.
No. I'm just saying that you've got 2 years at the professional level. Understanding these kids are young, but 2 years in a professional level of any other sport, people would be going so much harder on this kid. Are you kidding me? If he had attitude problems, if things are going the way they're going, if he's ripping teams apart and dragging them down and whatnot, and that's the public opinion, I truly think that he would be trashed even harder, and I think rightfully so, because you have a platform. You've been gifted a platform and a brand and a status, and with that comes the expectation. Again, similar thing with Bjergsen. Bjergsen didn't live up to a lot of expectations as he was the rising star. He wouldn't be the guy he is that is getting the criticism now in week 1. The criticism in week 1, right? That he's getting, where his brand and his individuality, his persona is so great, has been built up to be what it is, that there's an expectation that goes along with it. Also, I would just say that I'm pretty sure Dardoch, not even pretty sure, I know Dardoch plays into it.
Well, he's actively fighting against it now, right? Like,
well, yes and no. Again, that's what I mean by like that unifying thing, where it's like they in that mic check. Hey, if we were that close as TSM, we'd all be fist fighting right now. They're playing into it.
That's true, but I think he says it sarcastically, right? Because with I feel like with the interviews that I've done of him so far, he is very much trying to assert, like, yeah, I have anger problems, but I'm like a good person. You can ask people. He's kind of said that across both of the interviews that I've done with him. And then even, I think, the Echo Fox president, Jeffries, has said that, some of these guys have issues in game, but they're all really good guys. So I get that they're playing it a little bit, but I would push back a bit that he's, like, embracing it, because I feel like he is, at least whenever I talk to him, trying to recover some of that.
Wait, can I just cut in for like half a second?
Sure.
All right, you can go, Mark.
I was just going to say the reason that people don't give him the benefit of the doubt when he says that stuff is because that's exactly what happened with Immortals when they signed him to a 3-year contract, and they said they believe in him, and then it was so bad that they kicked him after one split.
Wait,
so,
I actually really want to address that, because people bring that up a lot. And to Immortals, he thought he was going to be playing with Huni. He thought he was going to be playing with one of the best top laners in the world.
I don't care what you think.
Yeah, that's
when
so
you come into the
stupid.
organization. That doesn't justify being a douche, to use crude language, from that point forward. You're in a professional environment. This is what I mean. This is what I mean when there's. I recognize they're young. And I empathize with that fact, and I've done many stupid things in my life, but when you have a platform and when you are paid the amount that you're paid to do a job, understand this is a job. You sign a contract, just like I signed a contract to be a caster, just like I signed a contract to be a bartender, way back in the day. I show up and I do my job. And so he may have had one expectation, and maybe the chips don't fall the way you expect. That doesn't give you carte blanche to just start acting the way you want and then use it and then excuse or justify it out later because of that thing. I'm with you. If we were going as hard as we are 6 months into his career, I'd say maybe we have an issue. It's been 2.5 years, and every team that he's gotten on or has been on has either removed him, has cited some kind of issues when it comes to communication or teamwork and those kinds of things. It's a story that seems to be, to some degree, although I recognize Travis's point in that, like, he does do his point in combating it, but that's because I think that 100% toxicity is not necessarily a brand that's sustainable in pro sports, but 80% toxicity, I'm using crude language, is. As long as you have those redeeming factors.
But I think even
so
the
he's playing towards that.
But I think even the toxicity is kind of overblown, because if you look at Team Liquid, right?
It's not.
Well, let him finish his thought, Mark.
Okay.
I'm not saying necessarily or at least from the pro side, what people intend when they say by it, but how people interpret it. Because on Team Liquid, even Dom said the reason or one of the reasons that he wanted to stop playing was because it was to work with Piglet. And then you go to, you could go more into that and people underperforming and all this and that, but just that, I think people don't take that into account when they talk about his time on Liquid. Then you go to Immortals. He thought he was going to be playing with at least a mostly English.
I'm going to chime in. Sorry. This is what's called mitigating factors, and like no situation is perfect, and he has had almost universally regarded as the worst attitude since he has joined the league, pretty much. So like every team has problems. Every team, if you want to look at their players, can say like, oh, I didn't like this and that. But why is he not held to a standard that like everyone else is in your mind?
But to Mario's point,
I'm not.
No, it's fine. Whether or not you look, I agree, Mark, with you that Dardoch and Dash, that even in shitty situations, you shouldn't act shitty because you're only making it worse. That's not a good situation. But what it can do is spawn a bit of a conversation around. When I interviewed Dardoch this weekend, he said that in the past he's always felt like an outsider joining every team because he comes in and he starts playing, and then everybody's like, "Whoa," because his reputation has preceded him, which makes a lot of sense. But with Echo Fox, he doesn't feel that way. And what is interesting to me to see is if you take Imoyo's point, which is that he's not been in ideal environments and that has been a contributing factor to his situation, I'm very curious if a different environment like Echo Fox, which he seems to feel differently about than the past teams he's on, is going to lead him to better success. I know
And-
it's a
and
bit of a
here's-
tangent, but it's like instead of just focusing on how shitty he's been in the past, sort of looking at, you know, how do we get this guy out of this situation, I think is an interesting
Well, so
conversation.
that's fair. Like, I don't think James or I want him to fail, and like I've said I've always defended them as a person. I've always said Dardoch is not a bad person, and like in that interview, I agree with that. Everything he said there, he has anger problems. He can't control his emotions. I've never said he's a bad teammate outside the game, and like talking, like shitting on his teammates and like being manipulative or anything like that. I've never said that. But what I've always said, and I will maintain, is that he is very articulate and he can express how these situations make him feel very well, and it makes it very relatable to people, but it never excuses it in my mind. And so, like, I watched him in scrims before playoffs on bad champions and then complain about it to everyone. Like, I have personal experience watching this, and I don't think I've ever seen anyone do that. And then, you know, so like,
we could talk about this for an entire hour.
Yeah,
but I think
like I said, I want Dardoch to succeed. I hold nothing against him, but his reputation has been earned explicitly through his actions.
So let's pivot the conversation to the way that we can wrap it up, which is,
sure.
At what point do we all think, and I'm very curious about Moyo's opinion on this as well, do we all think that like Dardoch has not to steal a Tyler 1 meme, but when is he reformed? When can we feel like he's reformed? Is it when he's on Echo Fox the whole year? Is it when we hear nothing but good things going into week 9 about how he's behaved? I'm just kind of curious on your guys' take on when. We were just talking about narratives for the analyst desk. At what point in time do you guys feel you have to pivot that narrative?
I would say, you know, a combination of those things. Anytime that you want to have people redefine your perception of them, you need to prove it, and not just in the good moments, but in the bad. So if Echo Fox is 18-1 and there's no complaints, that does less to, you know, sway my opinion than if they go 10-8 and everyone still says no, he's been great, you know. And I'll take people's word for it. I mean, I haven't been as close to him as I had when he was on Team Liquid, and I was relatively close to certain members on the other organizations, but you know, if the people there say no, he's great, then like I'll take their word for it. But 2 weeks is not enough, and I don't think, you know, I'll wait.
Yeah. I might be a little tougher to convince than even Mark. I would say at least a split, if not a full year. And again, I draw a lot of comparisons and analogies to traditional sports, which is that like Dardoch has a history on multiple organizations of not succeeding for a very specific reason. So to Mark's point, the narrative is deserved. The current narrative, in my opinion, is very much deserved. To combat that narrative, a 2-year built narrative, I don't think we can do that in 2 weeks. I think that's unfair to say, oh, 2 weeks of good, you know, let's go ahead and forgive everything that was and pretend like it didn't happen and the world has changed. But with a level of consistency, hey, a split in, Echo Fox finishes top 4 in the North American LCS, having lost a few times but recovering and performing strong through the playoffs, then yeah, I think we should be coming in to the summer split or coming out of the spring split talking about how maybe the Dardoch issues, personality issues, are a thing of the past. 100%, we should be willing to change the narrative, but the historical context of this player to what is currently happening doesn't match up in a way that allows me to, you know, to drop the storyline of this is a guy who you got to handle with care. He's volatile, and I think he's one of the best junglers we got, and I'm with Mark. I want to see this guy succeed. His Zac has been one of the dirtiest things I've seen so far this split. Trust me, I want this guy to succeed. I also love that he's kind of a bad boy, you know, like we need more of those in the league.
Oh,
in
yeah.
the league. We need double ifs. We need Dardochs. I want trash talkers. Like, I think that's a good thing. Just because you give a slightly negative persona or narrative to a player doesn't mean it's a bad thing, man. Work that brand, play that character. We need villains. Let's go.
If he wants to shit talk everybody in the league and even like his own team to an extent, that's fine. It's just like behind the scenes when you have no reason to do that is I think what we're looking out for.
Moyo, we'll get you. We'll let you close out your call here. When do you think that? I know you already feel like some of it is undeserved, but when would you say Dardoch is reformed?
I think I would be very surprised if he had any issue this year on Echo Fox. Now that he's with, Jared Jeffries, who's the president of Operate. Yeah, now he's with Jared Jeffries. Now he's with people from a traditional sports infrastructure.
Cool. So do you think it would be fair though to wait till the end of the split to kind of like determine whether or not we should drop the narrative though? Because just because he's in an org that you have confidence in doesn't mean they'll succeed in reforming him, right?
Yeah, for sure. I wasn't talking about this from an like analyst desk perspective.
Right. Okay.
I was speaking from like an individual perspective.
Just gotcha.
I'm not saying you guys should stop questioning his character or whatever on the analyst desk, but I was more referring to on Reddit and individuals that I interact with.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, look, you're gonna get that kind of shit just because that's the internet, and if people aren't Dardoch fans, of course they're gonna perpetuate that narrative. But I'm with you. So far, so good this season. He's on track to completely hack and slashing that narrative to the ground and building a new brand. Let's see what it is.
Thank you so much for coming on the show. Really appreciate it. And you spawned a really, really good discussion. I was hoping we'd get a chance to talk about Dardoch this episode. So thanks.
Thank you, man.
All right. Thank you much. Bye.
Okay. We've got 45 minutes or so, and we've only done about 3 callers so far. So.
Because I'm the worst.
Yeah.
Can I run to the restroom while you pull someone in?
Yeah. There we go. Maybe we'll get through a couple calls while you're in there.
Well, yeah.
Do that.
My only final thing I'll say is most teams have had professional sports psychologists and people who have very good reputations for a large period of time. Just so people know, like most of these teams have had sports psychologists.
Yeah. I'm all alone now. Mark left me. But it's a great time to give a shout out to all the folks who've subbed. Thank you, Tyler K, for 350 donations. Says #GetEmDash. All Day Air Day has subbed. Stickmana LV has subbed. Scient donated $3.69. It says, how much money do we have to donate to have Dash come back? Resist Impulse has subbed. The Real Slim Sammy has subbed. And Mihaila has subbed. And then I would just say, while we're waiting for Dash to get back, guys, callers come in. We're going to sometimes disagree with them. I don't mind if people say like next or tease the callers and razz them in the chat, but I'd request that if the mods see anybody, saying anything mean about the callers or using angry language, that's when they probably get a timeout. Just want to have a good time here.
Also, 77 Hockey saying Dash is talking this much now because he doesn't get as much chance on the desk. This is how Dash is, dude. He's like the gift of gab, is what everyone. Isn't that what it's called for the Irish people who don't shut up? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mitchin is on the show. Mitchin, where are you calling from?
East Lansing, Michigan.
Michigan. Okay, cool. What did you want to talk about?
I kind of wanted to discuss ways to increase viewership for NALCS beyond the product that is just like delivered on Saturdays and Sundays.
Sure. So what's a couple examples that you have?
So the first example I have actually can transition directly from the discussion that was just had with Dardoch is I think there needs to be and by the way, you do a great job with it, putting out content throughout the week with the interviews. I love it.
Sure, thank you.
I think there needs to be more of that. Like established, maybe even kind of like the dive, hour-long broadcasts discussing various things within the league.
Yeah.
Like
what you're talking about is called shoulder content. That's what I think a lot of the terms that people use is you kind of have like the prime thing, and then you have all this content that kind of goes around it, the shoulder content.
Yeah.
But I'm kind of surprised to hear, sorry not to cut in too much, but before you move on to the next one, or the next thing that you'd like to see, I'm surprised you feel that way, because I just feel like there's so much content already this split, where not only are they putting out things like this or that, and the dive, and what is the docuseries that just came to NALC? Oh, Eyes On?
Eyes On.
Yeah. But I also feel like...
I haven't even heard about that.
Yeah, I feel like that a lot of the
if you
stuff is
haven't
over on
seen the Eyes On series, go watch it.
Yeah.
It's phenomenally well
It's
done.
super
Okay.
good.
Well
But
done.
then
And I also keep up with the org content.
yeah.
Good.
Yeah,
I would
org
encourage
content has
everyone
been
to.
really
Yeah.
good this year. And then
Yeah,
and then
I've been keeping up with that.
I've got my weird content on my channel. So I'm surprised. I feel like on the shoulder content we have that stuff. We have that stuff nailed down. But you know, I do appreciate the idea that you'd like to see more of it. What other things would you like to see sort of increase the engagement with the broadcast?
I think that more support for fantasy LCS to get people like actually invested in players and watching games live would be huge. I think it's been around for like, I think it's the third season now, and at least to me, it feels like support for fantasy LCS has dwindled. I don't think it even gets hardly mentioned like on broadcasts, except in maybe passing.
Yeah, Mitchin raises an interesting point. Mark and Dash, as you guys are looking at revisiting the ways that you do the analyst desk, I know World's one of the fun things that you guys have is you show off like people's brackets and predictions and all that stuff and kind of compare them. Is this something that you guys have thought about bringing back as you guys are showing off predictions? Is kind of like fantasy teams are talking at all about that, or where do you see the place for that? Because it used to be part of PTL, I think, right back in the day. So.
Yeah, so at the inception of fantasy, there were a couple, or one or two fantasy segments that were tied into PTL and the like. I can't talk too much about fantasy from the standpoint of like I just don't work on that product. So I can only kind of give my opinion. I can't tell you like what's planned or anything like that. But I can tell you that I know fantasy has struggled, but in large part due to the changes that the NALCS has incurred over the years, right? Fantasy was incepted during best of ones. And then we changed the league to best of threes, and fantasy didn't necessarily get updated to deal with that. And so a lot of resources were kind of right when all of a sudden we're changing the league, which is the more important thing is to make sure the league works. We focus on that. We didn't necessarily bring. So now we're going back to best of ones. I think there may be, you know, some focus put back on fantasy. I personally love fantasy sports. I play fantasy football. I have certain issues with Fantasy League of Legends, which are related to the fact that there's no determined game length. But I don't think, I know for one, the NALCS broadcast is not the place to talk about fantasy. In terms of the live broadcast, like on the day, right? Because it's just like it's not necessarily relevant to that game itself.
I fully agree with that. Like just like fantasy football, it's not something that gets.
They're not talking about that during the pre-show.
During the day. It is something that is discussed in segments leading up to game kickoff.
Right. But I'm with you on, hey, I want to see more league content because I always want to see more league content. I do follow Travis where I'm like, hey, there's a shit ton of content this year. And it might just be that you're not finding all of it, which is totally fair because there's so much of it between 10 teams in NA, 10 teams in EU, plus Riot's production, plus all third party with ESPN, Travis, the score, all these kinds of places, right?
Just third party, Travis.
Just third party of Travis, right? So between all of that, there's so much content. So one, I would just say, hey, double check yourself. Make sure you're catching it all. Number two, I'm with you. I would love to see more of it. Number three, we're working on it. Again, a lot of that comes from the prioritization of how we delegate resources.
Mitchin,
and again, the first priority is the league.
Mitchin,
we
do you
franchising.
Sorry, Dash.
Go.
Mitchin, do you check? I'm actually quite curious about this. Do you check Reddit?
Yeah, daily.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I just feel like there's a lot of stuff that goes up on there, so that's why I was.
Well, do you sub to YouTube channels often?
Yeah, I'm sub to Travis. I'm sub to you. By the way, I'm still waiting on that blame game for the analyst desk.
I can that. I put it up. I put my script up on Patreon because I couldn't get a good, as I said in one of my tweets, I couldn't get a good
compromise between brevity and insight. Whereas like if I wanted to say everything I want to say, have it make sense, I need to
Sounds
have like
like
a
you just can't
4-page
defend
script.
your hatred of Bjergsen.
That's what it is, man.
Yeah,
You have
you know.
pinpointed it to the T.
Yeah.
Totally unfounded. No, I'm with you in that I would love to see more content happen. More content will come, and hey, as the sport grows and people with interest like yourself decide that hey, that's something that they want to produce themselves, more will flood the market. I think from Riot's standpoint is so much of our focus is quality over quantity. And making sure that when we release something, it's something that we're proud of and that can sustain. Again, I'll use a painful personal example. All chat. It is not around anymore. A lot of resources went into that. We spent a long time workshopping and planning and going through that, and then we went into it. We didn't execute as well as we thought. We took another hit, like another round, another go at it the next year with another round of funding. It still didn't necessarily hit the mark for what we thought our goals were, and so we canned it. We happily canned it, saying this wasn't good enough for what we wanted to be, and let's refocus and reapply the resources. So again, like I think more of those shows will come. But we're just making sure that we're doing the due diligence that when we present them to you for the first time, you're like, yes, this is a thing that I want to see stick around for 5, 10, 15 years and isn't going to get canned and redone next year.
Mitchin, thank you so much for your call.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah.
Thank you, dude.
Peace.
Trying to see if there's anybody else that I need to bring in. Thank you, chat. You were much more polite to that individual. That's what I mean.
Press F to pay respects to Josh, my roommate. He's
Rip.
He's in such a sad place now. Just
Kai is on the show. How's it going, Kai?
Hey Travis, I met you at finals last year. If you remember me.
I remember you, Kai. You were that individual that came up and said those nice things to me about my content, and you were really polite.
Precisely.
Yes. What did you want to talk? Or where are you calling from?
I'm in Connecticut right now.
Connecticut. What did you? Dash just growled at you.
I don't know what that means.
I don't know. It's
just north of New York. Just how I like it.
Yeah, you really got him excited about
that.
I'm getting. It's a good thing this show is wrapping in about 40 or so minutes because I don't know. Dash is losing it as the show goes on. What did you want to talk about?
So I wanted to talk about like CLG's current position right now and what I have like summed up their weaknesses to and how I think they can improve as the split goes on to go back towards above 5th place and like playoff contending team.
Cool. Okay, tell us what CLG needs to do to fix themselves.
Okay, so a little backstory. I've been a CLG fan since around 2016 MSI. So back when they made were arguably the best that they've ever been, I'm pretty sure.
So you bandwagoned. Okay, continue on.
Like I just started watching esports then, so
okay, that's fair.
Maybe whatever. Yeah. Anyway, so one of the core strengths that have been identified for CLG over the past like ever, I'm pretty sure, is they mostly put their focus on teamwork, and a lot of that obviously went to Afro, and it was really weird because after like the initial discussion of Afro leading CLG, I didn't see too much more talk about it. I saw some obviously, but like not as much as I'd expect, and I think the loss of Afro is actually like really hurting CLG in terms of communication and just overall shot calling, because I think currently the each member of CLG is individually trying to step up and help fill some of Afromu's shoes, and it's not working too well. There's a certain couple plays that you could see in almost all their games where it just seems like they're completely out of cohesion. Like there's this one play in the game versus Clutch where Rainover goes for, I think he was trying to de-ward or invade or messing in the enemy jungle somehow, and he just gets completely caught out, and then he tries to go over there and save him. I think he gets out, but he might have died. I'm not exactly sure. But yeah, just plays like that over and over again. It just seems like they're not all on one page.
I think what's even more damning than that play, I think James probably remembers this, is like there was a point where after Golden Guardians had thrown and CLG was like back ahead and they were 1-3-1-ing, all 3 lanes were like super far pushed up, and like Rainover was doing Gromp, not near any of them. And it was just like so clearly on different pages.
Dude,
that
it's like the most solo queue moment, like
Honestly.
ever. When you see any, it should not even isolate to the jungler. When you see any player doing a jungle camp at like 30 something minutes when you're trying to push down an inhib turret or something. I agree with you. Teamwork was always the identity of that team. This actually ties into that earlier question of like, when do identities change? And hey, maybe this split is where CLG's identity changes, because we came in saying they were the teamwork team. Aframu's gone. That's who we attribute a lot of that to. But Rainover has come in. And that's kind of been the storyline that we've been focusing on, is he's supposed to be the one that's supposed to have all this macro knowledge and understanding and be able to help lead the team, along with, say, hey, it's people like Huhi and Biofrost, actually, who the org's been vocal about saying that he's actually a better communicator than TSM let on. That's kind of been our focus, is can these guys now, you know, reconstruct the old CLG that was attributed, as you said, to Aframu and the ability to play super well as 5. Not the case so far, as we've seen.
One of the things I said in the preseason was that CLG was never a team about individual upgrades and being mechanically better than, like, they have good players for sure, but they were never like the team that was about that. And it was weird to see them going for individual upgrades, where it's like, one of the big complaints about Rainover at Team Liquid that they had was that he actually wasn't that vocal and he wasn't a leader. And then he's coming into a team that just lost its leader. And Biofrost is a mechanical upgrade over Afro, but he was just on a team saying that they didn't think he communicated enough. And it was like, I think a lot of people kind of buy into CLG as who they are as an organization. And I think even at this point, a lot of people are holding out for them to turn it around. But those are really big concerns, because those are harder to fix than just like, yeah, I mean, we just got to figure out how we all communicate. It's like you ended up with a bunch of players who were not filling the shoes of the people you were replacing.
I need to come up with a segment that's just called the 60-second switch, because I want to, while we're on the topic of CLG, but without taking more than 60 seconds, do you guys think Rainover is just bad without Huni? Because this is a theory that I've started to get, is that like...
I looked immediately to see what Mark's reaction was.
Because I am starting to worry that this is the case, because I thought about it again when Rainover and Huni both told me that they wanted to play again together, and before the start of the split, Huni was joking with me in an interview about like, oh, Rainover wanted to play with me again because he knows that he needs me. I'm actually starting to wonder, like, wait, does Rainover actually need Huni?
Well, I mean, he wasn't so hot in Korea before he came to Europe with him, and then he was great in Europe and NA with him, and now he's not with him in NA. Things haven't been going well, and Dardoch just joined up with him, and hey, Dardoch's having a career year resurgence.
Yeah.
Weird.
Again, correlation, not necessarily causation, but at a certain point, you got to start looking at it to say, okay, is this the only variable that's consistent, across all 3 samplings of data? And it's starting to look that way. Again, I think that it is very fair right now to be criticizing Rainover. Again, one of the bigger prospects when it comes to free agency. We knew that CLG wanted this guy even a year earlier, couldn't necessarily lock him down. Now they've got him. A lot of teams had, been talking about how much he could change the roster just by his game knowledge and his understanding of jungle pathing. And then, hey, none of it's come to fruition. So
just to wrap up the conversation, Kai, I think you identified that CLG, you said in the past their strength was based on sort of the strength of their team as a whole. Now they seem to be lacking that. Do you have a solution? How does CLG fix this?
Well, building into that, like you said, they need to, I guess this might be the split where CLG changes identity, and it's going to be really hard because they don't have the strongest solo laners. You won't really see like Darshan randomly solo killing. I mean, even that game where he was on Vlad versus the GP and he got a massive lead top, you didn't see a solo kill there. I think
he did solo kill him.
He did?
Yeah, there's a play where the rest of his team was getting killed in the bot lane, so I think people missed it, but I'm pretty sure he solo killed the GP in that situation.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I remember what you're talking about now. Yep.
It was pretty comical.
Well, your point remains that like Darshan alone probably can't carry
not
that team.
They're not like the strongest solo laners. I think one of the games he got soloed by Jensen versus C9, and that was a big shock. I think that was more he was caught off by the Cillian mid. I don't think they probably were too used to that. But a lot of which is what I saw is like, I guess, a chicken with no head in terms of shot calling. You probably saw you of course saw the Febin pentakill versus them, where it just looked like they were all running into Febin's ear and getting absolutely wiped. So just in terms of shot calling, they just seem so lost. And it's really hindering their ability to prove that they're good players. And I think a lot of people don't understand that when just looking at the team from like
your solution
face value.
I think you just reiterated the problem, but it sounds like you just think that the solution is to fix their shot calling issue. Yeah,
if they can find, if they can get like proper filling for the spot that Afro had on the team, I think that they can get back to being a pretty top tier team.
Yeah.
And if not, then change their style in a way that benefits less communication, but trades it off for something else and just as important.
And to be fair, all those guys are pretty low, like ego guys. Like none of them have a reputation, and then Tony's a good coach, so they have all the right setting to make those changes and improve.
Well, Kai, I don't think you're gonna get too much of an argument from any of us on that idea. So
no, we're all with you.
Yeah. Either way, thanks for calling in. Hopefully, CLG picks up. Otherwise, it might be time for you to find a new team.
Nah, CLG for life, baby.
Okay, there we go. Thanks.
I like it. Fandom. Peace out, man.
Cool. Let's see. Anyone else? Ape Games YouTube has subbed. Resist Impulse is trying to figure out how to get into the sub status on Discord. You know, it just takes Twitch and Discord syncing to make it happen. So hopefully it happens soon, and we can get it going. Looks like we've got TubGoat69 on the show. TubGoat69, where are you calling from?
I assume you said where you calling from. You cut out. Sorry. I'm from Orlando. How are you guys doing?
Pretty good. Great. And what did you want to talk about on the show?
I had more like desk related questions again. I'll keep it, relatively quick so you can get more people in here. But basically, I was wondering if you guys kind of like had an idea, or because in traditional sports you have mostly professional, they aim for professionalism at the desk, but in League you kind of throw some good hot memes in there every once in a while. So I was wondering if you guys were, would you rather prefer a completely professional desk, or you want to like joke around all the time? Or
I'm going to predict somebody here is about to reference that Inside the NBA show with Shaq and everybody, because I don't think there's any way for people to talk about this topic without referencing that show, even though I don't watch it. Mark is so excited about your question, Tub, that he got up and left. Yeah,
but
he just knew Dash would answer it.
Is that? Do you have anything else you want to add, or you want me to answer that now?
I mean, I have a few other points to go at, but if you want to answer that quickly.
I think it is an individual. Like it would be individual to each person on the desk. So I'd be curious to know what Mark's preference is. I will always lean slightly more professional. That was one of my other points. Sorry to cut you off. Is like you are pretty much the most professional caster is or analyst is what I would think. Yeah, and I think that's twofold. I think one, it's personal preference. Like that is just more the show that I would want to watch. So obviously I'm going to do it more that way. But then more importantly though, it is due to my role as the host, right? Which is that like I have to keep the show moving, and I do have to do my best in a lot of cases to make sure we're hitting multiple sides of the story or whatever. But that said, there's always a time for a meme, right? I mean, we did the League of Stopwatches thing on the desk this weekend just because, we have to meme ourselves at a certain point when it's that absurd. Oh yeah. And moving on, what are your thoughts about, maybe doing the pick and ban phase at the analyst desk rather than throwing it over to the casters for that? It's been discussed, and it's still on the table. There hasn't necessarily been a decision made regarding yes, we're going to do it, and we're going to do it on this day. Would you say it's on the table but not on the desk? There you go. That was really nicely done, Travis. It is on the table but not on the desk. No, 100% we have considered it. I think there's a couple things that go along with that, which is if the analyst desk is building points around champion select and then handing it to the people that are charged with for the next X number of minutes telling the story. What happens if we set up a story they don't necessarily want to tell or wasn't in their plan
Then they
or
have to tell
approach
it.
to the cast? Now they have to tell it, right? And so sometimes those things can conflict. Now, ideally, we're not all so misaligned
No, I was
that,
gonna say, yeah.
you know, that if I say one thing, the casters are like, Jesus fucking Christ, that's like...
Make him
you know,
tell it,
that's-
Dash.
God damn, now I got to talk about that and justify that dumb statement he just made? No, obviously, it's never that it never goes that far. But like, again, let's say we're looking at Champ Select, and what Jat and Mark find really interesting is the interaction of trades for bot lane supports. But really what Azale and Pastry are looking at is the top lane matchup. But we spend the whole time talking about pinching of those things, blah, blah, and we toss it to them, and they're like, well, what do we do now? Do we support their story, or do we just say, forget everything you just heard and listen to this? And so it's something we're talking about. It's something that I know we'd like to try. It's just a matter of execution. How do we do it in a way that we think would make it so you'd be like, yes, do that again, because it was worthwhile.
No, yeah, I agree. I feel like it'd be really cool to watch, or maybe even just see it happen one time, see how that goes. But
yeah. And to the win conditions point, I think if we were going to do that, then we would probably like try and hold win conditions and say, hey, now that you've seen Champ Select, now let's hear win conditions. And we would obviously edit based on, you know, the changing, you know, landscape of the narrative. But it is something we're looking at, Mark. We were talking about doing Champ Select from Analyst Test and saying it's something we're looking at, but not necessarily something we're 100% doing on this day or that day. We got to figure out how we do it and do it well.
Nope.
Yeah, I think that's definitely the case. What we say about the memes, pro memes?
Yeah.
Oh, I said I obviously index more professional, but it's individual, right? So like I'm the one that's part because of my role as the host, as I need to be a little bit more locked in and professional. But
I'm gonna try and meme it up a little bit more. Like if people saw the cheeseburger shit from World's Play-ins, like I want to, you know, not do that all the time, but stuff like that.
Acapella singing. Don't forget.
Yeah, that wasn't a meme, dude. That was me singing. What are you talking about?
Oh, sorry, man. Sorry to offend you. Another, you know, I don't know, point to talk about.
Last one, Tub.
All right, so sorry. I'll keep it quick. Do you guys take a lot of, you know, I don't know, inspiration, I guess, from, you know, conventional sports desks? Like my dad, he's a commentator for the Golf Channel, and he sometimes watches it or watches LCS when I have it on, and he's really impressed with how professional and everything, and how, you know, good it looks and everything. Wondering if you guys take some.
We'll pass our thank yous along to your father.
And any notes.
Yeah, and no, in all seriousness, shit.
No, yeah.
Haven't said long. Yes, we definitely do. Again, Travis said right there at the beginning, it's impossible to get through a conversation about the analyst test without probably comparing it to Inside the NBA, because I think for most of us, we look at that as one of the more successful desks in analyst desks in traditional sports, in terms of the identity and the fun and the banter and the interactions between the personalities on the desk. That's a lot of what we want to strive for. So we definitely do look into them. But we also challenge ourselves to hold on to what is uniquely esports. Again, meme culture is our culture. That's not tradition. That's not as much
100%.
traditional sports culture. I mean, that's internet culture. That was born out of the internet, and it has extended to traditional sports. Yes, we meme traditional sports players constantly, but like, let's be real. That's for those of us who were on the internet and playing games well before any of these, you know, people grabbed a hold of memes. And so that is why we go, I think, that extra step. April Fools, we do crazy, you know, broadcasts every once in a while. Like, we will definitely look to do that kind of stuff because we want to hold on to what makes us uniquely gamers.
I just like it when Dash pulls out his gun. He's just got this move that's like, I want to go to you. You know, it's just like straight. You know.
You want someone to like make a Photoshop thing where like Dash keeps shooting his analysts?
Yeah.
I talk with my hands a lot.
Yeah. Tub, thank you so much for coming on the show. Mark, sorry, what's that?
I said it's been an honor. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, dude. And tell your dad to keep watching LCS. We need an older demographic. I was gonna say, I just wanted to address something with Dash really quickly while I was thinking about it. Dash, I don't know how comfortable you are talking about this, but I thought it was really cool that you talked about the CSGO win from Cloud9 at the Major this past weekend. I think a lot of people, you know, there's a lot of people outside of the League of Legends fan base in esports that I think feels as though Riot is super competitive, and I very much disagree with this, but like out to get other esports. And so I think it was probably surprising for a lot of people who saw like a call out to an event that's happening on another stream at that moment. I'm just kind of curious if you have a backstory behind how that happened. And I think Mark was the one that tweeted that all the analysts at Desk was also watching the CSGO major while that was happening. So any kind of backstory, I think is kind of fun to hear about that.
I mean, I think the backstory. Well, so first of all, just the point, which is like the God, what
Right,
the stereotype that Riot,
yeah,
the stereotype that Riot is that we're a cautious company, and I think that's. I don't think that the opinion of people is necessarily unfair. I do think we're a more cautious company than others in some cases in terms of like how and where do we engage with certain conversations. But whenever I'm in a meeting or a conversation at Riot when it comes to esports and talking to esports leadership and what the direction of esports and what is a good image or picture of esports in the future, it involves more than just us. A healthy esports landscape is not just League of Legends. If it's just us, then something's gone terribly, terribly wrong. And so absolutely, when one esports succeeds, so do we. But with that, our caution, like that idea of being cautionary, that's where we ask ourselves, is it relevant to the moment? And so the backstory there is, as an example, if 100 Thieves had won, we weren't going to make that announcement there, because it didn't feel proper to come out of a C9 loss to 100 Thieves and immediately say, hey, I know 100 Thieves just won, but like, let's talk about the C9 CSGO team in this. If it was an org that was North American but wasn't in League, we also probably would not have made a mention of it, right? Because it doesn't necessarily pertain to our viewers, and that's our biggest responsibility, is to our viewers before everyone else. And so again, because a few things lined up and we're happily married, and that it was C9, it was the first NA team winning a major, and that's a big story, and it was coming off of their game. It ended up being a no-brainer. So I think it was ultimately an easier decision than maybe the community thought it was for us to make, but we were like, why the hell not would we celebrate
all the stars kind
one
of
of our
aligned in that
orgs,
situation.
doing this, following the C9 game. And yes, we were 100% watching on Mark's phone, actually, on the analyst desk. We had the game up on the monitors, like on the big monitors, and Mark and I were hunched over the desk just staring at his phone watching that overtime, and we were losing our shit.
Yeah, like literally screaming like when they tied up the first OT, and it was...
so nuts.
Yeah.
So nuts. Such a good series.
What's interesting, and this doesn't really have any relevance to what we were just talking about, was I was checking like the viewership between the two games as this fluctuated, and it's cool that like there are fans of both games. So like, obviously that is one of the biggest things going on in the CSGO calendar year. They had like 1 million people on the channel. And we were at, I think, around 160 when that was going on. And then immediately after the major ended, they dropped down to like 400,000 of people like watching kind of like the analyst desk wrap up and stuff. And we went up to around 190, which is like, 30,000 people stopped watching the CSGO major and moved over to this. It's like esports fans are fans of multiple games. And so like you can kind of service both Riot viewers and understand that they're probably watching other stuff too.
Yeah. That's cool. All right, next caller. If you want to grab him, Mark.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
No, it's cool. I thought it was cool. Korea 2NA has subbed. Games with Charlie Rose has subbed. Hyunmin has subbed as well. And then Justin P14 donated $10 and said, hey, Travis and Mark, just wanted to thank you for the show. It's been great to watch during my downtime at work. Keep up the great work and much love. Love you too, LOL. I don't know why they ended it with a love you too, LOL, but, clearly he doesn't love you. No, I'm just kidding. Peebling. How do you pronounce that, Peebling?
It's just P. Ebeling or Patrick.
Patrick. All right, we'll go with Patrick. Where are you calling from?
I'm from Cincinnati, Ohio, but shout out to Mark. I actually grew up around Boston.
Hey, what town?
Marlboro and Sterling.
Okay.
So outside of Worcester.
I was Needham. My mom was from Worcester, so she has that awful R accent.
Patrick, what did you want to talk about on the show today?
I think that Team Liquid has clear weaknesses, and they look good right now, but they will have more issues once like more of the teams kind of develop synergy and I feel like start to develop.
What are their clear weaknesses, just out of curiosity?
I think that if you look across the map in terms of their players, I think that their big issue that they're going to encounter is that they can really only play through bot lane, and that's going to conflict in terms of how Ole plays as a support player and how IMT kind of functioned previously. I was actually going back and looking through IMT's games, and if you kind of look how they operated, Ole and Xmithy would roam together and get top lane fed, and this is kind of conflicting with how Doublelift wants to play, and how Liquid kind of needs to play like going forward. So it's going to be interesting to kind of see how Ole adapts to that, whether he adapts to a more like lane dominant style, which is only kind of concerning because he seemed to have champion pool issues like during the Ardent meta, and during other periods of time with that. So
Patrick, are you? Oh, sorry. Finish your thought.
Oh, I was just going to say the other issue with it is Flame was also the main carry with a Coco descent occasionally popping off. So they were like more lane dominant during that top lane carry meta, and I think that Impact has issues that were present. And Cloud9 brought in Ray because he couldn't play carry champions. So it'll be interesting to kind of see I guess how the team fixes those issues later on, because I think right now it's fine because they just have more pre-built synergy compared to these other teams. But I think going forward, as other teams develop better macro and fit better together, I think there's going to be problems.
I have 2 thoughts on this.
Really quickly, though.
Okay.
I just want to make sure Patrick is aware of the Shake Shack prophecy.
No one cares about this, dude. Only you care.
It's going to come to fruition, and I'll be right. James, you don't know about this, do you?
I don't.
Okay, Shake Shack prophecy goes like this. I'll say it really, really quickly. Went to Shake Shack with Ole and Doublelift. Ole's first time at Shake Shack. Doublelift ordered for him. They come outside, sit down, and with the food. And Ole realizes Doublelift did not order him fries. He wanted fries, and then Ole, for the rest of the meal, kept bringing up the fact that Doublelift didn't order him fries. I think it's a sign of communication issues and synergy issues to come. Yeah, we will see. I've been surprised by the first couple of weeks, but I still think it's going to pop up, and Patrick seems to agree with me.
Yeah,
Mark,
quote me. They're done zone.
Mark, go for it. Feel free to use the Shake Shack prophecy on the analyst desk if you need. Mark,
I will.
Go for it.
Okay, I was going to say, one, I agree that this team cannot be the same team that Immortals was last year. They I think they have to play different, and I think they've done a good job of doing that for the most part. But it's going to be a process where they're going to have to be able to pull this off with the course of the whole split and playoffs, and especially best of fives. But what's interesting is I would argue that this is one of the worst metas for this team because top lane tanks are not strong. You see a lot of bruisers and carries up there. The bot lane is about as unvolatile as you can make it with double Targons and overheal and all this garbage sustain in the bot lane.
Hopefully gone soon.
Hopefully gone soon. So what I would argue is that this is a bad meta for Team Liquid right now, on paper. Maybe not necessarily, given that all the other teams don't have as much pre-built synergy and whatnot. But it is, at least in my mind, not a good meta for them. But they're doing all right in it.
I agree. I think that part of that is due to the fact that they have really good map play. Already, compared to a lot of other teams. I think the only other 2 teams really right now that are contesting them with that would be Echo Fox and maybe 100 Thieves. I just think going forward there might be issues because unless Impact is looking like playoff Impact towards the end of the split, I think that they're going to have more issues with they're going to have issues against the top, I would say 2 or 3 teams. I still think they'll be good. I'm not saying that they're not going to be a top 4 team. I just think that they're going to struggle more than I think a lot of people are prophesizing at this point in time. And I just think that, compared to, if you just even look at IMT last season, during, the meta when it wasn't really top lane as top lane focused as it was, they didn't look nearly as good. And again, I know I'm making comparisons of 2 completely different teams and 2 completely different organizations, but you just kind of that's all we have really to go off of other than the first 4 games of the split, which since it's best of 1 we really don't have a lot of data to go off of from that.
Yeah, I'm with you on the bot lane issue with TL, which is just that any team in my opinion that has Doublelift I think has to be worried about falling into a pattern where they live and die by the bot lane. So that's probably my largest concern for that squad going forward. But I agree a lot with a lot of what Mark said in terms of They got a 3-1 scoreline in a meta that most people would say shouldn't suit them, and at a time in the split when most people weren't expecting them to necessarily work as well as they already are, it seems. And so far evidence is kind of countering a lot of what I've had to say, although you point to the 3 games they've won, and Doublelift has been performing or ahead in most of them, or at least taking care of in a lot of them. Their one loss, they got kind of dumpstered or focused in the bot lane. So I do think I think that concern is the one I latch onto the most, is the bot lane concern for TL, just in terms of the focus and the way they play the game.
Do you guys have any concern over like Ole, like in terms of like, I guess, adapting to a more lane dominant style? Because I mean, he really excelled again when he was roaming, you know, and getting ahead in, you know, top lane or mid, or just, you know, helping ward out with Xsmithy. So I'm just really curious, like, how that's going to function, considering that that's like.
Can I reframe that question to Mark? Because Mark, I remember on one of your win conditions, you had said that for Team Liquid, it was going to be Xsmithy and Ole, right? Jungle support synergy was going to be how they would win games. So it's kind of aligning with his question, like, has your perception changed since you made that, you know, win condition? Granted, it was a matchup specific win condition, but like, what's your opinion on that jungle support duo?
It's hard to say because the champ pool complaints or concerns came about because of Worlds, and it's hard to translate that to the North American stage because, one, you're not bot laning with Cody Sun anymore. So if the meta forces you to play a protect your AD carry, you're protecting a better AD carry.
Yeah.
And 2, you're not playing at Worlds. You're not playing Fnatic and oh my god, I can't remember the Korean team. Longju. You're not playing those guys. You're playing worse teams. So will this be a concern on the international stage if the meta ends up with passive supports again? Absolutely. Is it a North American concern now that you have Doublelift? I don't know. I would say probably not.
Yeah, I mean, I think that they kind of similarly have like the same issue that I guess TSM kind of had the past couple splits, which is where they dominated NA just due to the fact that they had, you know, superior players for the most part. And obviously, like, there's differences. Like, IMT doesn't have Bjergsen, or I would say even Hauntzer to some extent. I think Hauntzer and Impact are pretty comparable, but it's depending upon what time frame you're comparing them throughout the season. So I think it'll just be, I don't know. I'm just interested to see like how this team adapts. I just think that they're probably going to have issues towards the middle of the split. Again, as I said, I still think they'll end up, you know, top 3 or 4. I just think it's, you know, they're going to have to resolve some of these problems.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised to see the team struggle, but to me, they're the NA super team, right? So now they got to live up to the name.
Seems like Echo Fox is the NA super team. Patrick, thank you so much for calling in.
Yep, thank you.
Okay, we've got a couple more people here in just a moment. We should be wrapping up any minute. Con, normally Mark pulls people, but I pulled you because I saw... What?
No, you didn't. I did.
I put him in the waiting room.
Trying to take credit for that.
This is the weirdest attention grab I've ever seen.
No, I definitely put him in the waiting room. I did because I saw his. What did he say?
Oh, I thought you meant pulled right now.
No,
I was like, what?
No. I put him in the waiting room. He's a Twitch sub, but I enjoyed his comment. Con, have you been on the? You were on the show before, but remind me where you're calling from.
I'm pretty sure, isn't he?
I am from Idaho, Washington border area by Spokane.
Yeah, and you've been on 3 times? This
is my 3rd time.
Okay, yes, that's what I thought. All right, so you have I saw what you want to talk about. You have a reckoning, I think, to bring to the show.
All right, well, it's gonna leave Dash out, but I'll fill him in. So the first time I was on, I was talking about how I thought Echo Fox was going to be a top team, and especially Travis especially, Mark a little bit was just laughing at a lot of people in the beginning that the notion that Echo Fox could be a good team because they had so many people there that just felt like the team was destined to just.
Okay, did I laugh at saying they could be a good team, or did I think you probably said that they were going to be like the best team, right?
I said top, yeah. I'd say up there with TL.
Yes. And so
I think I remember some jokes about like Echo Fox TL final. I think I remember some jokes like that from Travis.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I also said at the time, I said TSM wouldn't make any finals and they'd miss Worlds this year.
Oh. Yeah.
Yes, you.
I remember
You drove a lot of traffic to my YouTube channel. Thank
cool.
you for that. I appreciate that. I think that was more what we made fun of. But yes, you did predict the Echo Fox thing.
Yeah. Well, I was also piggybacking off of a guy right before me who said Echo Fox is going to be really good too. So
yeah.
So you're the first guy that bought into Foxcoin. Is what I'm hearing. All right.
Yeah.
I guess I did.
He was an early adopter for sure.
So here you are now. So what do you say about all this stuff so far, or how do you feel right now?
Well, one, I'm feeling pretty good about my prediction. I think what you're seeing, I think a lot of it is meta a little bit though, but I think the reason why Fox is doing so well is just because they have strong mid and top laners in this meta, and their bot lane with Adrian and Apollo are just really good at just not losing lane.
Yeah, so I would agree to the extent the same way I just said that like the meta was bad for TL. It's very much the same way it's good for Immortals, or excuse me, Echo Fox, where it's a lot of carries in the top lane which are pretty viable. Huni can smash other carries in carry versus carry matchups, or can take GP or whatever. Phoenix is I would say just a solid laner all around. So I don't think he's too meta dependent. And then the bot lane is one that, like you said, does very well. They don't lose too hard. Sometimes they win, and it's a pretty stable bot lane. So you can play
you meant
very top side.
You said Apollo.
What's that?
You said Apollo. Twitch chat
I said volatile. Maybe I misspoke.
I heard volatile.
I'll take Adrian.
Yeah, I'll take Adrian. Not very volatile, I think is what I was trying to say. Might have. But either way, jungler can stay topside for the most part. I'd be interested to see Dardoch's jungle proximity to his bot lane. And the thing is, in this meta, you won't get punished that hard. So we'll see if things change. And of course, the attitude is that, like I said, that's still kind of catch all for why you can be like, oh, I don't think they'll be good because at some point they're going to kill each other. Which I don't know.
Well, I think at this point, I do think there's a little bit. I know Travis kind of mocked the idea that somebody like a Rick Fox or professional, like somebody who's been in sports, could help change Dardoch's attitude at that time. But I do think having that in there helps, and I think Travis also.
I don't think people were mocking the idea that a sports psychologist could help Dardoch. I think and I don't know if this is specifically what Travis was talking about, but it's definitely what I've been talking about, is that he's had sports psychologists in sports like figures.
I agree with you 100%.
I think what I said was, I don't think Rick Fox is involved in the day-to-day of the team, and so I don't think that like the narrative of, oh, finally, what Dardoch has been waiting for his whole LCS career, Rick Fox has shown up and will tell him the secret to being great teammate. But I actually, conversely to that, I did say that Jared Jeffries, I did this interview with him, and he basically said that he didn't feel like he felt like he could handle any of these players that were thrown at him, because he felt as though none of them would be as bad as anything he'd seen in the NBA, which I thought was a pretty good point.
I've talked with Jared Jeffries a little bit. He did a ESL show that I was on at the same time, and he's really cool.
Yeah,
and
he's
pretty
smart
about
dude.
It.
I love the fact that Rick is getting a lot of attention, but I think that people are sleeping on Jared Jeffries' involvement with that team. I think he deserves some attention too.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I also want to touch upon the TSM part too, because I think that we're giving them a pass this early because they're a new team, but I think they're on a lot worse levels than what we want to give them credit for.
Yeah, I mean, I said it kind of near the beginning of the show. I think that it's fair to criticize TSM in the context of the NALCS, because again, if you take the bot lane from a European LCS champion team and a bot lane that has done some things internationally, right? You're going to add that to Bjergsen and Hauntzer, who have previously won the North American LCS as many times as they had, and then you put the one unknown factor player-wise of Mike Young in there, along with one of the top coaches from last year, Immortals. I agree with you. They don't really have an excuse for dropping as many games as they already have in the North American LCS. I just think people are drawing way too many conclusions. We're 2 weeks in, and Worlds is going to start. Worlds is September, October, November time or whatever. Like, come on, we wouldn't be doing this 2 weeks into any other 2 weeks into a football split. I don't think you're like, fire the coach, get rid of this guy, do that thing.
I don't think you should be at all either. I agree. It's just more for the spring split, especially.
Right. So I think you give them the entire split. Let's see what happens when they're done with the split. I would still expect them by the end of this split to finish in playoff position. That's still my expectation, even from now, is that this set of players with this coach should be able to fix whatever issues they have, at least to finish 6th and go to playoffs. And then I think the criticism can start rolling in summer if they're not shaping up to be that world's caliber semifinal, quarterfinal, semifinal caliber world's team.
Con, thank you so much.
That's when I'm gonna start going in on them.
For calling in, really appreciate it. We got 2 more callers to go, but thanks again.
Thank you guys. Have a good night.
Yeah. Okay, so we're at the 10 o'clock mark, so we got to get through these next 2 pretty quickly.
Okay, I'm just gonna grab them right away.
Sure. We got Resist Impulse, who was doing everything he could to get on the show, and he's here now. Where are you calling from, Resist Impulse?
I'm calling from Maryland.
Yeah, you've been on the show previously, yes?
Yeah, I was on the first episode.
Yeah. Welcome back. Back.
Thank you. I want to thank you for posting on YouTube that you were going live.
Oh, thank you. Yes, I've noticed that people seem to catch that there, so I'm happy that I can do that.
Yes, I'm a big YouTube fan.
Thank you.
And thank you, Mark, for liking my tweets. The terrible experience us 1%ers have watching on a 21:9 monitor.
Yeah, it's rough. It's rough.
So I had 2 topics. I don't know which one I was pulled in for. One is TSM's feelings when Reggie is a bad barrel maker, or the League's clash system.
I don't remember. You put a donation. You donated, and that's when I grabbed you. I don't remember what the donation was.
Well,
I just saw
that's how you get his attention.
I guess take your pick, whatever you think.
Well, they both revolve around communication because I'm huge on communication.
Pick
have you guys
one.
played
Pick
sports,
one just because we're
any of you
winding
guys?
up down the show. Resist.
Yeah. Have you any of you guys played traditional sports?
No.
James and I played a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. I played plenty.
So when you're a kid and your parents throw you on a soccer team, right? You're not necessarily friends with all those players.
Right.
So that is League's clash system's biggest failure right there. They want you to be a pre-made, and if League wants to last for decades and generations of players, then they need to stop refusing to invest in the infrastructure that is vital to traditional sports in the esports scene, and that is communication and strangers being forced on a team and learning about how to operate within that. I'm a super competitive person. Communication is my biggest strength, and without voice comms and without a tiered or an organized structure, like think rec games, recreational leagues, right? Then there's no barrier to entry or better system than the solo queue. And I can post my Discord link in there all the time.
Is it too late to pivot to the TSM topic?
No. I can pivot to Reggie is a bad barrel maker.
Well, I was gonna talk about this. I don't know how James felt about talking. Do you want to talk about this, James?
I'm all for it.
I
got opinions. I got opinions on opinions.
Yeah, you can't pay James to not talk.
Yeah.
What I'll say is, I think I appreciate the comparison, but it is different, obviously. And the big one is anonymity. I always mess that word up, but I don't think parents would sign their kids up to go play with a bunch of randoms if there was no accountability to who they were and that they could swear and cuss out their kid.
Mark, that is the best point I have heard to date. I appreciate that.
So yeah, I understand it's not. You weren't going for a direct comparison, but I don't think parents would let their kids do stuff.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. I've run Facebook groups with thousands of members, and that is the biggest issue when it comes to combating hate speech and things like that. Is the anonymity that being online can provide.
Yeah, I mean, I don't personally care about it. I'm just saying, Riot Games takes the parental process a lot more than I personally care. I don't care.
Yeah. There used to be all these communities where you could just go in and get thrown on a team, and there was definitely issues with toxicity and stuff like that, but that gave you the competitive outlet to be able to leverage a really valuable skill at the pro scene that isn't available to use in solo queue, which is communication.
So the first thing I want to figure out is, are you suggesting that Riot needs to do, what are you suggesting? I guess is what I'm getting at. Are you suggesting that we need to do more, we need to create a peewee system, a high school system?
I think
I'm saying
I kind of want to get what you're suggesting at so that I can look at it from that angle.
That kind of needs to be the end goal if we want to compete with a long-lasting generational, process that the traditional sports have, right? But for now, we need to address it with our adults that are playing.
Really quickly, by the way, do you know about Super League Gaming Resist Impulse?
Yes, and it's not in my city, I don't think, last time I checked. Yeah. I've checked on it a few times.
Yeah, it's just an interesting topic because if you're talking about building like a system, a local system for people to connect and play together and get better, I think that's an interesting idea.
Yeah, because I'm 100% with you that that in order to create a sustainable ecosystem for esports, there needs to be a path to pro, and that literal phrase there, path to pro, is something you'll hear regurgitated by Riot esporters out the ass, right? But it's because it means something, which is that like there needs to be, when you're 8 years old and you aspire to be an athlete. When I aspired to be a soccer player or a basketball player, I had to understand there had to be a clear path or way of getting there, steps to take, which is, okay, join Pee Wee soccer, then go to competitive soccer, then play high school soccer. From there, I will go to, I'll get drafted to college, blah, 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 or whatever. I'll go to a college, get a scholarship, and then from there, go into the MLS, right? Okay, there's a clear path to pro. And I agree that needs to exist for League of Legends. But again, I think that's something that has to come in incrementally and only comes in when there's need for it. So when the professional level gets to the point where, hey, it is aspirational. First, you need to create something that is worthy of being aspired to, right? So first, we need to create and establish a league in which you want to be a pro. Now that people want to be a pro, that it is reasonable to make a living being a pro, even a bottom end pro, because that's important. Yes, top end pros have been making a fair amount of money for a while, but bottom end pros not so much. So again, when I told my mom I wanted to be an astronaut, she said go for it, because she's all. But when I told mom I wanted to be a professional video game player when I was 14, there's no such thing. So she would have institutionalized me.
Yeah, but it's part of culture now, right? Like you're bringing it backwards into a
no. I'm laying out where we are.
A bigger cultural, you're bringing it into a bigger cultural aspect, right?
So I'm just trying to lay out. I'm just trying to lay out where we are, right? So do you follow my logic that where we are right now is we finally created something that is worthy of being aspired to. We have also now finally gotten to a place where anyone who reaches that level can consider themselves successful and can live a sustainable and reasonable lifestyle. Okay, now we need to approach the issue of how do we get people from never heard of League of Legends ever in my life to actually being a pro player. And that comes from, okay, we've got a tutorial that introduces you to the game, then normal games, then we get you into rank to deal with the competitive element. Now, what you're talking about. Hold up. Just follow my logic. So now we have the thing to be aspired to on one side, and we have the game to the level that you can understand it, and we've brought you up to this, at least this competitive level of solo queue. Now, what you're getting at is the issue of is how to do this final bridge, how to get from here to here, right? How do I go from being into the competitive scene and wanting to become a pro, knowledgeable and into the game, to actually becoming a pro? And I agree, we don't have the best solution for that. But that's where we are still making strides and efforts towards, okay, we have the collegiate system, and every year more colleges join that list. Every year more colleges hand out scholarships. If more colleges hand out scholarships, more parents are going to be willing to say, hey, you know what? If you want to go spend your hours invested in this game and it's going to net you an education or a future, they're going to be willing to invest in their children. As soon as parents start investing in their children at younger or earlier ages, that's when you're going to see things like community organized events. That's when you're going to see community outreach and things on the local level.
We slashed the throat on the community organized events. We slashed its throat.
In what way?
When you took away the RP rewards, that was the backbone, the funding system for the community.
All right, so that's where I have to step back from the conversation only because I'm not a part of that decision, and don't have the context as to why we made that decision.
Yeah.
But I would remind you that again, like at some point, the company,
needs to make a dollar.
Right. Well, it needs to make a dollar.
I'm a business major,
and at some point isn't responsible for you making it from wanting to play League of Legends to being an LCS member. At some point, people have to take ownership over that, and at some
I understand completely.
My competitive
That's why I pay a coach. I have a lesson every week with my coach. And Dash, what are you guys doing from the desk to push forward in our culture, in the league culture as players, the importance of hiring a coach to climb the solo queue ladder and things like that, right? I
don't know. Hey, well,
is that my job?
Yeah, I was gonna say I would not pit it. before Dash, the color in Dash's room has been getting more and more dramatic as this
he has it on his heart rate. He has a little heart rate thing that raises the color.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to put this
I would
on
say
Dash and
I'm not sure. Look, I think it's fine for you to raise the point of, I do think Riot has been investing in Path to Pro. I think Collegiate is an example of that. I think partnering with something like Super League Gaming to create City Champs is there. I've been impressed with
Big Ten Network. Big Ten Network just signed on. Like that's huge, right? As soon as you get collegiate investment, other stuff follows.
I personally, and I know that I'm, Dash can't speak to this, but I can say I don't think that the RP rewards is the thing that really needs to be the anchor for community competition. Because I think that stuff is going to exist without it, and from my understanding, that thing was discontinued because it became like this clusterfuck of scandals that came out where it's like, I deserve RP for this, and it just became like a huge maintenance issue is my guess for why that went away. So I'm not surprised by that.
Yeah,
I think it's fine that they're doing
I understand that.
I also don't know if Dash needs to be telling the viewers that they need to go hire a coach. Is the final thing I would say.
Well, hold on. He's talking about taking personal ownership over it, and I'm saying that I've taken personal ownership because I'm 32 years old. I don't plan to, make it pro, but I decided if I'm going to spend my time in this game as, a hobby or pastime, then I want to get good, right? And how do you get good? I've played traditional sports. I played non-traditional sports, and one of the ways is a coach. And if you paste your Discord link or, mention that you have a coach, it's something that's looked down upon in our community. And I think that vocal community leaders like you guys have a platform and an ability to I'm not saying you need to preach that everyone needs to go get a coach, but that it's not a bad thing, right?
I spent all of Worlds talking about how everyone should use Mobalytics to identify their personal strengths and weaknesses and get better at
I appreciate that. I use Mobalytics.
I would argue that once again this is potentially, and I haven't been, harassed for saying I have a coach, but I believe that this is once again one of those misdiagnoses. God, I can't speak tonight. Of the problem of the online ecosystem, and it's not that people are making fun of you for having a coach; it's that they want to make fun of you, and that's what's different about you. And I think, without going too far down this rabbit hole, people oftentimes they don't know anything about anyone because it's all anonymous. So if you say something, that's what they're going to attack about you. And I think that represents itself in a lot of ways where you start hearing about the problems of like gender and those things crop up as well. Without going too far down without going down that rabbit hole, I think if you make it known that you're doing something that is not considered, like if it's not the complete status quo and someone wants to get a rise out of you, that's what they're going to attack.
Dash, I know you're about to explode. Resist.
No. Can I just leave you?
The pros have coaches.
Resist. Thank you so much for coming on the show. Dash, final thoughts?
I was gonna say I'm gonna leave you with this, which is that I agree with you that again, for the sport to grow, that an ecosystem needs to exist where as a very young kid I can decide I want to do something and I can understand how to achieve that thing. Yes, that is somewhere we need to get. My point is that I don't think 100% of the responsibility falls on Riot. At a certain point, we have to be able to divorce ourselves from this idea that Riot has to lay out everything for us. I mean, if I want to become a doctor or a basketball player or whatever, at some point I got to just take my time to go outside and shoot hoops. My brother decided to do that in high school. I didn't. He's a better basketball player than me. Back to life. He took ownership over that, and he's a better basketball player. But I'm a better gamer because I spent my hours playing games.
Resist, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Can I have last words?
You have 10 seconds.
Okay, so communication is really important, and it starts with these efforts, right? If we have communication as a huge issue in the LCS, the NALCS, and we're not starting earlier. Mark, no!
Resisting you for coming on the show. We got one final caller.
Maybe communication's not his strong.
Oh my
Sorry, that was an
no, it's a jab.
We got one final person.
I think
on
well,
the
we're
show.
bringing someone in. I think communication's huge. I agree, but I think again, it's just by simply putting in voice chat or by meshing people together. That's not always the best solution to.
And I'm pro voice chat, by the way.
I'm dragging Colluder in.
All right, go for
Do it.
Colluder, hello.
Hello.
Hi, where are you calling from?
I'm calling from Los Angeles.
You are welcome. Hello to fellow Angelino. You are our last caller for the night. What did you want to talk about?
I want to talk about the environment of the C9 coaching and specifically how that contrasts to TSM's coaching environment and how the traditional sports, how they have to coach.
Cool.
And how it's similar to...
so go ahead and give us your thesis statement here, and then we'll go through it pretty quick.
Yeah, so, I mean, I've been seeing more and more through Sven's interviews that the time in TSM was pretty dysfunctional, and how they still might have those problems in their org, and the coaches, how Reapered is so laid back, he has conversations with the players instead of just straight coaching them. Yeah, what were you gonna say?
Well, I was just gonna. I guess we're just trying to get to the crux of you just want to set up a discussion comparing and contrasting the two different environments. Do you want to determine which one's better? Do you have an opinion on which support staff or coaching style is better?
Yeah, I'm a C9 fan, and I definitely think C9's is better. It's one of the reasons I've stuck with C9 throughout all their orgs and throughout all their iterations of the team and whatnot. I also think you can compare it to in traditional sports, how at the highest level of traditional sports, it has to be a conversation between players and coaches, bouncing ideas off of each other, and the coach essentially will have the final say, but it's a conversation between players and coaches, not players and players. You know what I mean?
I think the conversation around coaching in any sport is incredibly interesting, only because, again, as a former athlete and fairly competitive one, I am a player, or I'm an athlete who responded very much to like the hard ass coach, which I think a lot of people don't, right? Like so often you hear about like, oh, I need the coach who's gonna be able to build his team up and inspire, or like work through this. My college coach, he just constantly told me I was fat because I couldn't get abs, and would give me crap for
I'm learning so much about Dash's childhood
for being an actor.
Like, my brother actually got really good at basketball. I played video games.
Why are you making fun of James? Has a lot of life experience to pull from.
I know,
right?
it's just fun. It's just like so many of these answers go back to like Dash's like. Yeah. And then there was that one time where the ice cream fell off the cone.
I mean, that's how I approach issues, is I have to relate them to myself, right? Which is like, okay, so I competed at a high level in running in college, but my coach was a total dick to me because he understood that that's how I responded. That said, when I look at the league coaching ecosystem, I'm kind of with you, where I think that C9 in large part has impressed me over the years with their org and the way that they handle either conflict, changing rosters, or attacking problems, which is that I rarely hear of animosity. More so, people coming. There's only maybe a couple, and Mark probably knows of like the one or two instances in the history of the org where I'm like, oh, okay, that was a personnel oh, somebody really got after somebody for it kind of a thing. But otherwise, like, that is one of those orgs that I have a ton of confidence in terms of understanding their players and how their players need to be coached, which is not something I think TSM does well. It doesn't mean that the coaches on TSM couldn't be successful coaches. It's just that maybe they weren't applying the right coaching techniques to the players they have or to the situation, that was in front of them.
The one thing I'd like to throw in here as well is that league coaching is, pretty different than traditional sports coaching because you are in such a intimate environment that you really don't see in other sports. There is not much of a separation between player and coach, and players have a much larger voice than they will ever have on a real team, unless you're talking about like a Tom Brady. And even then, Bjergsen probably has more say over anything than Tom Brady ever did. And we're talking about like the all-time greatest quarterback. I would reckon that's the case. And I was not talking to Bill Belichick, whatever, this is getting off topic. But the point is that the environment that is fostered is as much on the players as it is on the coaches, because those two things are basically inseparable in my eyes. Like, you are a core group of 5, 6, 7 people out against the world, and there's a camaraderie in that, but it's also on all 7 of you to make that work. And so when Sven's talking about those problems in the interviews, as far as I could tell, he was talking mostly about player problems and not really coaching problems. And
that's actually a good point.
And one of the things to note is that, like, C9 have had their player problems. They've moved the players to avoid those problems, and you're left with players like Sneaky, like Smoothie, who are unbelievably easygoing from all accounts. By all accounts, they are not. No one's ever said that these guys are hard to work with. Jensen, you've heard a little bit between him and his junglers, but that's mostly it. And then Licorice is completely new, and he sounds like an eager young guy. So I think it's the kind of thing where you can't say something's coaching or players. It's both every single time.
It's a symbiotic relationship, right? Yeah. Again, that's why it's so unique to the player. Again, my coach was a dick to me, but he couldn't be a dick to everybody, because he knew if he was a dick to that guy would get all in his head and he'd get all defeated before he'd even step on the track for a race. But he knew it would fuel me and make me mad, and I'd run faster because of it, right? Also, ask Mark. I have lots of opinions around coaching. I have had many a conversation with Mark around what I think should happen when it comes to coaching, but I have to yield to the person who's actually spent time in the system. Again, I pull all of my examples from traditional sports. As he just mentioned, we are not traditional sports. There are differences. So I like to think in my idyllic way that, hey, if I came in and applied this process or this conversation, I could resolve issues within X, Y, or Z team. It's probably not the case, but that's what kind of makes it a fun theoretical discussion.
Yeah, there's absolutely things that apply as well. But, like, just to point out, one of the biggest differences is, like, there's no subs, basically, in the LCS on top teams. You're never getting subbed out on a good team. Right. So, like, you kind of just have to figure out a solution that works. It's never like, all right, you overstepped your line, we're bringing somebody else in. Like, it's a great solution. I love that solution.
I actually agree with everything both of you guys just said. That was incredibly.
Shut up, Travis. Yeah, it's complicated, I guess. Colluder is what I'm saying. Is it sounds like that situation is one where, like, I doubt Parth is as authoritative and as direct with what he expects as Reaper. But I'd also say it sounds like Bjergsen, Doublelift, and Hansir are a lot more opinionated than the C9 members.
Yep, 100% agree.
Yeah, but I also think it's the coach's job to get that mediation between the players, and it's a triangle, and you need to solve how that's working out.
It is 100%.
Relationships in there.
And that's where I say, hey, that's just a matter of time. Again, we're 8 years into a sport. In order to be a coach, so what you're saying is the prerequisites for a coach is someone who has a very high level understanding of the game. If not, in a lot of cases, as much as a pro, if not more in some ways, in that they have to be able to look at more aspects of a game, not just certain microcosms. Then they need to have interpersonal skills so that they could deal with these people, management skills, because now they're in a position of power, as well as just general life skills. And hey, you're pulling from a pool of 21-year-olds with like 2 years professional League of Legends experience and 0 years like adult lifing experience, there's just not a sizable enough pool right now to say every team will have a good coach. But I agree with you 100%. That is the coach's responsibility, and the mark of a good coach is one that comes in and actually, nails all those bullet points. There's maybe 20, 30, 40% of the coaches in league right now, I think, are really, really top tier coaches, and the rest still have a lot of growth to do, just like every other aspect of the ecosystem right now.
Hey, thank you so much for calling in, Colluder. We are well over our time, but I want to thank you so much for the call.
Okay. Have a good night.
Yeah,
thank you.
All right, see you.
All right, so that's the show. Thanks again, Dash, for coming on. I think you definitely made an impression on the Twitch chat. Very intense discussion. People finally get to see what you're like behind the scenes. Is this how you are in meetings? Or are you just like,
wait? Have you?
One,
I thought,
Jat, I think that the analyst desk should still be hosted by me. Two,
hold on. I thought you have spent enough time around Dash to know these.
No, I know.
Weren't you guys drinking in China and stuff together?
I know this stuff. I know this because every now and then it's like
you're just speaking for Twitch chat.
Yeah, for Twitch chat.
Travis was my first interview ever.
Yes, I was his first interview ever, and I think that's funny. I've always known this about Dash. It is an interesting situation where Dash, who is somebody who is very opinionated and willing to argue a point and really go into discussion, is actually the host of something where he's more about pulling all that stuff from everybody else. So it is always fun when he's given the spotlight to sort of share his thoughts on stuff.
But that's why I can't shut up off air, right? I get it all out off air so that when I'm on air, I can take a step back and say, fine, I'll let them, home run the points and whatnot.
Mark, as we're winding down, anything that you want to shout out? Anything you want to say here at the end?
Nope.
Dash, what would you say to everybody? Where can people follow
I mean,
you?
look, I've loved the discussions we've had tonight. I would say to everyone, even if we disagreed on the topic, I love the fact that you were, willing to come in and question us and challenge us on, on the assumptions we've made or what we've done so far in the split. Continue to do that. Again, the show is made for you guys. So obviously, if we're not hitting certain beats that you want us to hit, then we're failing at our jobs. But I want it to be an open discussion, and hopefully this did some service and towards acknowledging the fact that we are open to conversation. If you reach out to us and you're nice, but not nice is the wrong word. What's the word I'm looking for? You're willing to work. You're not abrasive, and
you're not a hater, I guess.
You're not looking for conflict. If conflict is not your goal, but presenting an issue and finding a solution is your goal, then hey, I'm open. I'm open to it. If you're constructive, perfect. Yeah. There it is. Anyway.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming on. For everyone watching,
very much for having me.
We do broadcast this usually on Mondays at 8 p.m. Sometimes we have to bump it over to a different day, such as we did today. The VODs all go up on youtube.com/Travis Gafford, and the podcast version, we do release an audio version. I always forget to promote it. It is available on iTunes, Google Play, and other places like that. So thank you so much, everyone, for watching. Thank you to all the subs for supporting me. And to State Farm for supporting the analyst desk.
Travis, are we the most popular League of Legends podcast, or are we losing the Beyond the Rift? Are they on iTunes?
I don't know what their audio numbers are. I mean, I would assume that the Riot one,
the dive
is probably the most.
And
popular.
now Euphoria, the new.
We're definitely more popular than Euphoria. That's easy. All right,
Travis will cancel this show if it's less successful.
Thanks everyone for watching.